What's going on, everyone? It's the Fanfic Club here. We've got something amazing for you today. What if Chiron realized a powerful demigod was hidden in the wizarding world and sent Annabeth to extract Harry Potter? Real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join thousands of story lovers and hit that subscribe button. Alright, story time. Chapter 1. The Athenian exchanged. The centaur's hooves clicked against the wooden floor of the big house as he paced. Outside, Camp Half-Blood continued its normal summer activities, the clash of swords from the arena, laughter from the canoe lake, the distant roar of flames from the forges, but inside, Chiron's troubled expression spoke volumes. "I've felt it for weeks now," he told the empty room, running weathered fingers through his beard. "Something unprecedented." He halted before an ancient bronze disc mounted on the wall, its surface etched with constellations and runes that shifted and realigned under his gaze. Golden light pulsed from a point in northern Scotland, a beacon that should not exist. Chiron pressed his palm to the cool metal, closing his eyes. 3,000 years of training heroes had taught him to trust his instincts. This was not a false alarm. The door creaked open behind him. "You wanted to see me?" Annabeth Chase stood in the doorway, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, gray eyes alert and curious. At 17, she was one of his most experienced campers, and the one with the strategic mind needed for what he was about to propose. "Yes, my dear." Chiron gestured her inside. "I believe we have a situation requiring your particular talents." Annabeth's eyebrows rose as she approached the bronze disc. "The Archimedes locator is active. I thought it only responded to powerful demigods." "It does." Chiron tapped the pulsing light. "What do you know about the wizarding world?" Annabeth blinked, thrown off balance, a rare occurrence for a daughter of Athena. "Hecate's pet project?" She frowned, mentally sifting through the limited information Camp Half-Blood kept on the subject. Mortals blessed with the ability to channel magic through tools. They have their own society hidden from regular mortals. We don't interfere with their affairs, and they stay out of ours. Correct, for the most part. Though pet project might understate matters, Hecate considers them her children as surely as Athena claims you. Chiron smiled thinly. The arrangement has worked for centuries. Their magic operates differently from ours. Their threats remain their concern, our monsters remain our problem. Until now, Annabeth deduced, studying the pulsing light. What changed? Chiron's tail flicked anxiously. A boy. Or rather, what the locator suggests about him. For weeks now, it has been detecting divine energy unlike anything I've seen in centuries. Energy coming from behind powerful magical barriers at a place called Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. A school for Hecate's children, Annabeth mused. But why would a demigod be there? Wouldn't they be at Camp Half-Blood? Under normal circumstances, yes. But these are not normal circumstances. Chiron moved to his desk, retrieving a file. His name is Harry Potter. To the wizarding world, he's a celebrity, famous since infancy for supposedly defeating a dark wizard, though the details remain murky. Orphaned in the same incident, raised by non-magical relatives. He passed Annabeth a moving photograph clipped from something called the Daily Prophet. A teenage boy with unruly black hair and startling green eyes looked uncomfortable with the camera's attention. A curious scar marked his forehead, a lightning bolt. Something cold slithered down Annabeth's spine. "You don't think?" She began, her mind racing ahead to the obvious conclusion. Green eyes, lightning scar, unnatural power, it painted a troubling picture. "I don't know," Chiron said gravely. "But if what I suspect is true, if Zeus broke the oath twice, then this boy is in incredible danger," Annabeth finished. "From both pantheons." "Precisely. An unclaimed, untrained child of the Big Three, especially one already targeted by dark forces in his own world. Is a disaster waiting to happen," she concluded, already mentally cataloging the possibilities. "So what's the plan?" Extract him? Chiron nodded. First, we need confirmation. The wizarding world has powerful magic that could be confusing the locator. We need someone on the inside, someone who can recognize a half-blood, evaluate the situation, and make contact if necessary. Annabeth looked down at the photograph again, at the boy's weary green eyes. And that someone is me. Who better than a daughter of wisdom? Chiron squeezed her shoulder. We've arranged everything through Hecate. You'll pose as an exchange student from Athena's Academy of Advanced Magic. That's not very subtle, Annabeth interjected with a hint of a smile. Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight, Chiron replied. Hecate has provided all you need, wand, background knowledge, appropriate clothing. She seems unusually interested in this arrangement, though her reasons remain her own. When do I leave? Tomorrow. Term begins September 1st. Chiron looked troubled. Annabeth, this mission requires the utmost discretion. If Harry Potter is indeed what we suspect, extracting him will cause significant upheaval. The wizarding world sees him as their savior. But if he's a demigod, he belongs at Camp Half-Blood, Annabeth insisted. With us. Perhaps, Chiron said softly. But remember that belonging is not merely a matter of blood. Observe carefully before acting. Annabeth nodded, her analytical mind already mapping contingencies, strategies, and approaches. Still, a thread of uncertainty wove through her plans. Camp Half-Blood's relationship with the wizarding world had always been one of mutual disregard. Crossing that boundary might have consequences none of them could foresee. What about Percy? She asked, thinking of her boyfriend. And my cabin? They'll notice I'm gone. Percy has been informed you're on a special assignment for Olympus. As for your siblings, they've been told much the same. And they accepted that? Annabeth raised a skeptical eyebrow. Chiron's eyes twinkled. I may have implied it involved redesigning some temples. Annabeth snorted. That would do it. Her expression sobered. I won't let you down, Chiron. I know you won't, my dear. The ancient centaur looked once more at the pulsing light. But be careful. You'll be navigating unfamiliar waters, a magical system with its own rules and dangers. And whatever secrets Harry Potter holds, they may be more complicated than either of us suspects. King's Cross Station bustled with the mundane chaos of any Monday morning in London. Men and women in business attire rushed past with coffee cups clutched in hand, tourists consulted maps with bewildered expressions, and announcements echoed unintelligibly through the cavernous space. None of them noticed the steady stream of oddly dressed individuals disappearing between platforms 9 and 10. Annabeth adjusted her grip on her trunk, a monstrous thing covered in worn leather and brass fittings, and approached the brick barrier. Her newly acquired owl, Sophia, hooted indignantly from her cage. I know, Annabeth murmured. Just a little longer. The orientation materials from Hecate had been thorough, if bizarre. Run straight at a solid wall. Don't hesitate. Keep regular mortals, no, muggles, from noticing. Simple enough in theory. She took a deep breath, fixed her eyes on the barrier, and moved forward with purpose. For a heart-stopping moment, she braced for impact, then she was through, emerging onto a platform that existed in the between spaces of reality. A scarlet steam engine gleamed on the tracks, billowing white smoke into the air. The platform teemed with activity, families saying goodbyes, students greeting friends, owls screeching, cats prowling between legs. Annabeth took a moment to observe. This was Hecate's domain, a world of magic that operated under different rules than the one she knew. The divine energy here felt distinct from Olympian power, more channeled, less wild. She scanned faces, searching for the boy from the photograph. Instead, her attention caught on a family of redheads surrounding a bushy-haired girl and a lanky boy with familiar unruly black hair. Target acquired. Annabeth maneuvered her trunk toward the train, positioning herself to accidentally cross paths with the group. As she drew closer, she caught fragments of their conversation. "Can't believe they're still doing the tournament after what happened, shoo, Ginny." "Not here, all I'm saying is that security had better be tighter." The conversation cut off as Annabeth's trunk collided with one of the redhead's trolleys. "Oh gods, I'm so sorry," she apologized, adopting a flustered demeanor. "This trunk has a mind of its own, no harm done," said the plump, motherly woman who seemed to be in charge of the redhead clan. She gave Annabeth a warm smile. "First time at platform 9 3/4, dear." "That obvious?" Annabeth laughed. "Yes, I'm an exchange student. Annabeth Chase, from America." "America." The woman looked delighted. "How wonderful. I'm Molly Weasley. These are my children, Ron, Ginny, and their friends, Hermione Granger and Harry Potter." Annabeth noted with interest how the woman's voice dropped slightly on Harry's name, her eyes darting around as if checking who might have heard. Harry himself shifted uncomfortably, his green eyes wary beneath his fringe. "Nice to meet you all," Annabeth said brightly. "I've heard Hogwarts is amazing." "What school are you from?" asked the bushy-haired girl, Hermione, with keen interest. "Athena's Academy in New York," Annabeth replied, reciting her cover story. "It's small, specialized. We focus on architectural magic and strategic applications." "Architectural magic?" Hermione's eyes lit up. "I've never read about that field." Hermione, the tallest redhead, Ron, groaned. "We haven't even reached school yet. Save the academic interrogation." "It's fine," Annabeth assured him, watching Harry from the corner of her eye. He seemed distracted, his gaze distant. "I don't mind questions." A whistle blew, cutting through the platform's chatter. "Better get on, dears," Mrs. Weasley urged, ushering them toward the train. "Have a wonderful term. Stay safe. Ron, don't forget to write." They clambered aboard, Annabeth, coincidentally, following the trio into the same carriage. Harry helped her lift her trunk onto the rack, and she didn't miss the surprising strength in his slim frame. "Thanks," she said. "Mind if I join you? I don't know anyone else." "Of course," Hermione answered, while Ron and Harry exchanged a brief glance that Annabeth couldn't quite interpret. "We can show you the ropes at Hogwarts." As the train lurched into motion, Annabeth settled in for the journey, mentally reviewing her mission parameters. Observe. Evaluate. Determine if Harry Potter was truly a demigod. And if he was, figure out the safest way to extract him from a world that might not be willing to let their savior go. "So," she began conversationally, "tell me about Hogwarts." The Great Hall of Hogwarts exceeded Annabeth's expectations, and that was saying something for someone who had walked through Mount Olympus. The enchanted ceiling reflected the night sky above, thousands of candles floated in mid-air, and 4 long tables stretched the length of the hall beneath banners representing each house. The architecture alone was enough to make her fingers itch for her sketchbook. Gothic arches soared overhead, their mathematical precision softened by centuries of magical adaptation. If her mother could see this place. But Annabeth wasn't here as an architectural enthusiast. She stood with the nervous first years awaiting sorting, though she towered over them by at least a foot. Professor McGonagall, a stern-looking witch with spectacles and an emerald green robe, had explained that Annabeth would be sorted just like any new student, regardless of her age. From her position, she could see Harry at the Gryffindor table, sitting between Ron and Hermione. The candlelight caught the edges of his scar, and for a moment, Annabeth could have sworn it glimmered with a faint blue light unlike the golden flames around them. Interesting. One by one, the first years were called forward to sit on a stool and have an ancient, patched hat placed on their heads. The hat, sentient, apparently, announced their house assignments to the hall. "Chase, Annabeth." She stepped forward confidently, ignoring the curious murmurs that followed her. At 17, she made for an unusual sorting candidate. She sat on the stool, and McGonagall placed the hat on her head. "Well, well," said a small voice in her ear. What have we here? Oh my, a demigod in Hogwarts. How unexpected. Annabeth stiffened. You can tell. Of course I can, my dear. I see into your mind, after all. Daughter of Athena, brilliant mind, truly brilliant. Ravenclaw would suit you well. But such courage too, and loyalty to your camp, and secrets. You're here for a purpose, aren't you? Looking for someone? That's between me and Chiron, Annabeth thought firmly. Protective of your mission. Very well. Better be. Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the hall. Annabeth removed the hat, handing it back to McGonagall with a polite smile that masked her unease. The hat knew what she was, what else might it reveal? The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, with the Weasley twins wolf-whistling as she approached. Hermione scooted over to make room for her. Brilliant. Ron said as Annabeth sat down. Now you're with us. Lucky, Annabeth agreed, glancing at Harry. Up close, those green eyes were even more striking, the same sea green as Percy's, but with an unsettling luminescence that occasionally flickered beneath the surface. The rest of the sorting proceeded without incident, culminating in a feast that materialized directly onto the golden plates before them. Annabeth hesitated momentarily before serving herself. At Camp Half-Blood, a portion of every meal was sacrificed to the gods. Here, no such custom existed. Would the Olympians consider that disrespectful? She decided to err on caution's side. Excuse me, she said, standing with a small portion of her meal on a napkin. Where's the nearest fire? The trio looked at her blankly. Fire? Harry repeated. Why do you need cultural custom? Annabeth explained smoothly. At Athena's academy, we offer a portion of our first meal in a new place to the goddess. For wisdom in our studies. Oh. Hermione lit up. Like ancient Greek offerings. There's a fireplace behind the staff table. I'm sure Professor Dumbledore wouldn't mind if you explained. I'll handle it, Annabeth said quickly, not wanting to draw administrative attention so soon. Thanks. She made her way to the fireplace, aware of curious eyes following her. The small fire burning there wasn't a proper brazier, but it would have to do. She discreetly dropped in a portion of her meal. For the gods, she murmured quietly. And for wisdom on this quest. The flames flared briefly blue before settling back to orange. A good sign. When Annabeth returned to the table, Harry was watching her with an odd expression, not suspicion exactly, but recognition, as if something about her actions had resonated with him. Your school must be very different from Hogwarts, he observed. Annabeth shrugged. Different magical traditions, that's all. We're more connected to the old ways. Old ways? Ron mumbled through a mouthful of potatoes. Like divination and that rubbish? Ron, Hermione chided, just because Professor Trelawney is a fraud doesn't mean all divination is rubbish. Actually, Annabeth said carefully, I meant the connection between magic and divine power. In America, some of us still acknowledge magic's origins with the gods. Gods plural? Harry asked, suddenly alert. Like Greek gods? The interest in his voice caught Annabeth's attention. It wasn't merely academic curiosity, there was something personal in his tone. Exactly. Zeus, Athena, Poseidon, and the rest, she confirmed, watching him closely. Our school particularly honors Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. A shadow passed over Harry's face. I had a dream about someone like that once, he said quietly. A woman with storm-gray eyes and a spear. She was standing on a beach, arguing with a man who held a trident. Annabeth nearly choked on her pumpkin juice. Athena and Poseidon, exactly as they appeared when arguing, which was most of the time. Weird dream, mate, Ron commented, reaching for more chicken. It wasn't just a dream, Harry insisted. It felt real. And they were arguing about me. The great hall seemed to fade around them as Annabeth locked eyes with Harry. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty, her mission wasn't based on a false reading. Harry Potter had dreamed of the gods because the gods were discussing him. The only question was why. Before she could probe further, the hall fell silent as an elderly wizard with a magnificent silver beard rose to his feet. Dumbledore, she presumed, Hogwarts headmaster. "Welcome to another year at Hogwarts," he announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. "Before we become too befuddled by our excellent feast, I have a few announcements." Annabeth listened with half an ear as Dumbledore covered standard rules, forbidden forest warnings, and introduced a new defense against the dark arts teacher, a grizzled man with a revolving magical eye that made the hairs on her neck stand up. "And finally, I must tell you that the Interhouse Quidditch Cup will not take place this year." This caused an uproar among the students, particularly the athletes, judging by their horrified expressions. "This is due to an event that will be starting in October," Dumbledore continued over the protests, and continuing throughout the school year. "I have great pleasure in announcing that this year at Hogwarts, we are to have the honor of hosting the Triwizard Tournament." The announcement sent ripples of excitement through the hall. Beside her, Ron was practically bouncing in his seat, while Hermione looked concerned. Harry, however, had gone very still. "You cannot be serious," he said quietly, tension evident in every line of his body. "What's wrong?" Annabeth asked, as Dumbledore explained the tournament's history, a competition between 3 major European wizarding schools involving 3 highly dangerous tasks. Harry's knuckles were white around his goblet. "Last time they held this tournament, a student died. I saw it happen. And Voldemort," he cut himself off, glancing around furtively. "Voldemort?" Annabeth prompted. "The dark wizard who gave me this," Harry touched his scar briefly. "He used the tournament to come back. It was a trap." Annabeth absorbed this information, mentally adding it to her assessment. "But surely they wouldn't hold it again if there was danger." Harry gave her a look so jaded, so weary beyond his years, that she was momentarily taken aback. "You don't know Hogwarts very well yet," he said simply. Dumbledore finished his announcement with an age restriction: no one under 17 could participate, which caused fresh outcry, particularly from the Weasley twins. Then he dismissed them all to bed. As they rose, Annabeth felt a strange prickling sensation at the base of her skull. She turned sharply, scanning the hall, and caught the magical eye of the new professor fixed directly on her, his scarred face unreadable. She didn't like that. Not one bit. "Come on," Hermione urged, "I'll show you to Gryffindor Tower. As a prefect, it's my responsibility to help new students." Annabeth followed the trio through Hogwarts' labyrinthine corridors, past moving portraits and shifting staircases. Her architect's mind mapped each turn automatically, while she continued her casual interrogation. "So, Harry," she began as they climbed yet another staircase, "you've been at Hogwarts since you were 11? "Yeah. Best home I've ever had," he replied. "Better than living with my aunt and uncle, anyway." "They're muggles," Ron supplied helpfully. "Horrible ones." "You live with your mortal family?" Annabeth asked, latching onto this detail. Many demigods came from broken homes or single-parent households, it fit the pattern. Harry gave her an odd look. "Mortal? You mean muggle?" "Right, sorry. Different terminology in America," she covered smoothly. "So both your parents were magical, but you live with non-magical relatives?" "My parents died when I was a baby," Harry said flatly. "Voldemort killed them." "I'm sorry," Annabeth said, meaning it. Demigod or not, she recognized the pain of loss in his eyes. They reached a portrait of a fat lady in a pink dress, who demanded a password, Balderdash. The portrait swung open to reveal a cozy circular room decorated in red and gold, with squashy armchairs and a crackling fire. "Girls' dormitories are up those stairs," Hermione pointed. "You'll be sharing with me, Lavender Brown, and Parvati Patil since you're a 5th year." "Actually," Annabeth corrected, I'm in my 7th year at Athena's academy. I'm 17. Hermione frowned. That's odd. They've placed you in classes with us, according to Professor McGonagall. Your schedule matches ours. Annabeth filed that information away. Either someone had made an administrative error, or someone, Chiron, Hecate, or Dumbledore, wanted her close to Harry. I'm sure there's an explanation, she said. Maybe the curriculums don't align perfectly. Well, it'll be nice having someone new in our dorm, Hermione said brightly. The girls can be a bit focused on divination and gossip. And Hermione's focused on literally everything else, Ron quipped, earning himself an elbow in the ribs. They settled around the fire, the common room gradually emptying as students headed to bed. Annabeth used the opportunity to observe Harry more carefully. His posture, the way he habitually touched his scar when uncomfortable, the slight defensiveness in his stance, all spoke of someone who had faced more than his share of danger. Just like a demigod. But something didn't add up. If Harry was a child of the Big Three, Zeus, specifically, based on Chiron's suspicions and the lightning scar, why hadn't he been claimed? Why would Zeus allow his son to remain ignorant of his heritage? Unless Zeus didn't know. The thought hit Annabeth with such force that she nearly gasped aloud. What if Harry's mother had somehow concealed the truth, even from the king of the gods himself? It would be unprecedented, but not impossible. Especially if Hecate was involved, manipulating the mist on a grand scale. Annabeth? Hermione's voice broke through her thoughts. Are you all right? You looked miles away. Just tired, she lied. It's been a long day. We should all get some sleep, Harry agreed, standing with a grimace as he stretched. Classes start tomorrow. As they headed for their respective staircases, Harry paused, turning back to Annabeth with those unsettling green eyes. That thing you did at dinner, he said quietly. With the fire. I've done something similar before, except it wasn't on purpose. Last summer, I was really angry about something, and my food just combusted. Blue flames, just like when you made your offering. Annabeth's heart raced. Accidental manifestation of divine power was textbook demigod behavior. That's interesting, she said carefully. In our traditions, blue flame is associated with divine acceptance. Maybe you have a connection to the old ways you don't even realize. Harry's expression was troubled. Maybe. Lately I've been feeling different. Like there's something inside me trying to get out. He shook his head. Sorry, that sounds mental. Not at all, Annabeth assured him. Magic manifests in different ways. Maybe Hogwarts is helping you access new aspects of your power. Harry nodded, not entirely convinced. Right. Well, good night. Good night, Harry. Annabeth watched him climb the stairs, her mind racing with implications. This mission had just become much more complicated than a simple extraction. Harry Potter wasn't just displaying signs of being a demigod, he was beginning to awaken to his divine nature, right in the heart of Hecate's world. And based on his troubled expression, the awakening wasn't going smoothly. Annabeth woke before dawn, a habit ingrained by years of dawn combat training at Camp Half-Blood. She lay still for a moment, orienting herself, four-poster bed, red velvet hangings, stone walls. Hogwarts. The other girls in the dormitory slept soundly. Hermione's bushy hair spread across her pillow like a halo, books stacked on her nightstand even here. The other two, Lavender and Parvati, had decorated their areas with photographs and trinkets that sparkled softly in the pre-dawn light. Annabeth slipped from her bed and retrieved her enchanted backpack from her trunk. Designed by the Hephaestus cabin, it looked like an ordinary school bag but contained a hidden compartment accessible only to her. Inside were her celestial bronze dagger, a canteen of nectar, a bag of ambrosia squares, and a golden drachma for iris messages. She wouldn't carry the dagger openly, that would raise too many questions, but she needed to know it was accessible. Monsters had an uncanny ability to find demigods, even in supposedly safe locations. If Harry was indeed a son of Zeus, his divine aura might attract unwanted attention, especially now that his powers seemed to be manifesting more strongly. Annabeth changed into running clothes and slipped out of the dormitory. A few early rising portraits murmured greetings as she made her way through the castle, navigating from memory back to the entrance hall. She needed to scout the grounds, map potential extraction routes, and get a feel for the magical barriers surrounding the school. Plus, she hadn't run since leaving camp. Her muscles ached for movement. The great oak doors were unlocked, which surprised her. For a school supposedly focused on security, Hogwarts had remarkably few visible precautions. She pushed the door open and stepped into the cool Scottish morning. Mist, the meteorological kind, not the divine reality-obscuring force, clung to the grounds, shrouding the edges of the lake and forest in ghostly white. The sunrise painted the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold, reflecting off the castle's many windows. Despite herself, Annabeth paused to admire the view. If she survived this mission, she'd definitely be sketching Hogwarts for her mother. She set off at a steady jog, circling the castle clockwise to maintain orientation. The grounds were extensive, rolling lawns, greenhouses, a stadium of some sort in the distance, and the dark, forbidding line of trees marking the forbidden forest. Beyond that, mountains rose in the distance. Annabeth was halfway around the castle when she spotted another figure near the forest's edge. She slowed, squinting through the mist. Harry Potter stood alone, his back to the castle, facing the trees. Even from a distance, his posture radiated tension. His hand was extended toward the forest, and with a jolt, Annabeth realized he was speaking, not to himself, but to something among the trees. She changed course immediately, approaching at an angle that would allow her to observe without being immediately obvious. As she drew closer, the air around Harry seemed to shimmer with a faint blue light, the same color she'd noticed in the Great Hall. It wasn't coming from his wand, which was tucked visibly in his pocket. It emanated from him. And in the forest, gleaming eyes watched him. Not human eyes, too large, too luminous. A horse? No, something larger. Annabeth froze as realization struck her. That was a thestral, a magical creature only visible to those who had witnessed death. According to Hecate's briefing materials, thestrals pulled the school carriages, invisible to most students. But why was Harry out here at dawn, talking to one? She edged closer, straining to hear his words. Happening more often now, Harry was saying, his voice low and troubled. The dreams, the burning, the feeling like I'm about to explode. And now there's this tournament again, and I just know something terrible is going to happen. The thestral tossed its skeletal head, stepping forward to nuzzle against Harry's outstretched hand. The blue light intensified where they connected, causing Harry to gasp. You feel it too, don't you? He whispered. Something's changing. Inside me. The thestral's eyes fixed on Harry with unnerving intelligence. It stepped back, then bowed its head in an unmistakable gesture of deference. The hair on Annabeth's arms rose. Magical creatures recognizing and respecting divine power, another textbook sign. A twig snapped beneath her foot, and Harry whirled, the blue light vanishing instantly. The thestral melted back into the forest. Who's there? He called, hand moving to his wand. Annabeth straightened, adopting a casual jog as she approached. Morning. Sorry if I startled you. Just getting a run in before classes. Harry relaxed marginally when he recognized her, though wariness lingered in his expression. You're up early. Old habits, she explained, coming to a stop beside him. Were you talking to someone? He hesitated, clearly debating how much to share. Just a thestral. Can you see them? Annabeth nodded. Thanks to Hecate's preparation, she knew what to say. Yes. My grandfather, back in America. I was with him when he passed. The lie came easily, though she felt a twinge of guilt. In reality, she'd seen far too much death for someone her age, friends lost in the Titan War, monsters dispatched to Tartarus, the horrors of the labyrinth. "I'm sorry," Harry said automatically, then looked back toward the forest. "Most people can't see them. They think I'm mad when I mention them." "People fear what they don't understand," Annabeth observed. "Was that one, glowing? I thought I saw a blue light." Harry stiffened. "You saw that?" She nodded, deciding to push further. "It reminded me of the fire at dinner. Divine energy often manifests as blue or golden light in our traditions." "There's nothing divine about me," Harry said sharply. Too sharply. Interesting, Annabeth thought. His denial felt practiced, as if he'd been telling himself the same thing repeatedly. "I didn't mean to suggest there was," she backpedaled strategically. "Just making an observation. Magic manifests differently for everyone." Harry relaxed slightly, though his eyes remained guarded. "Right. Sorry. I'm a bit on edge lately." He glanced at the sky, which was brightening steadily. "We should head back for breakfast. First day of classes." They walked back toward the castle in silence for a moment before Annabeth tried again. "Those dreams you mentioned," she said carefully. "The ones with the woman with gray eyes and the man with the trident. Have you had others like them?" Harry shot her a suspicious glance. "How long were you standing there?" "Not long," she assured him. "I just caught the end of what you were saying. About dreams and burning." He sighed, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "It's complicated. I've always had unusual dreams. Sometimes they show me things that are really happening elsewhere. Sometimes they're just nightmares about Voldemort. But lately, they're different," Annabeth supplied when he trailed off. Harry nodded. "They feel ancient. Like I'm witnessing arguments that have been happening for millennia. And when I wake up, there's this energy inside me that doesn't feel like my normal magic. It feels wilder. More dangerous." They reached the entrance hall, where early risers were already heading to breakfast. Harry lowered his voice. "Look, I don't know why I'm telling you this. We just met. But since you mentioned those offering rituals, do you know anything about this kind of magic? Anything that might explain what's happening to me?" The question was direct, vulnerable, and came with an expectant look that made it clear, Harry Potter had been searching for answers long before Annabeth arrived. She had a choice. She could tell him the truth, that he might be a demigod, a child of Zeus, unclaimed and unprotected in a world that didn't understand his divine heritage. That camp half-blood could offer him training, community, and explanations for the power surging inside him. But Chiron's words echoed in her mind, "Observe carefully before acting." Revealing too much too soon could be disastrous, especially if she was wrong about Harry's parentage. And even if she was right, extracting him from Hogwarts would be complicated. He clearly had deep connections here, responsibilities he took seriously. "I might," she said finally. "There are traditions in America, ways of understanding magical heritage that differ from what you're taught here. But I'd need to know more about what you're experiencing before I could say for sure." Relief and disappointment warred in Harry's expression. "Fair enough. Maybe we could talk more later." He glanced toward the great hall. "Somewhere private." "Absolutely," Annabeth agreed. "After classes today?" Harry nodded, then grimaced as Ron and Hermione appeared, waving them over. "Not a word to them," he murmured quickly. "Not yet." Ron wouldn't understand, and Hermione would research herself into a frenzy. "Your secret's safe with me," Annabeth promised. As they joined the others for breakfast, Annabeth's mind buzzed with new information. Harry Potter was experiencing divine awakening, seeking answers, and trusting her more quickly than she'd anticipated. Her mission was progressing perfectly. So why did she feel so uneasy? Defense against the dark arts took place in a classroom that immediately put Annabeth on edge. Diagrams of dark creatures lined the walls, interspersed with magical instruments whose purposes she could only guess at. A large mirror hung at the back of the room, not for decoration, she suspected, but detection. Professor Moody, or Mad Eye, as the students called him behind his back, limped in after the class had seated themselves, his magical eye swiveling independently of his normal one. "Books away," he barked without preamble. "You won't need them today." An excited murmur rippled through the class as they stowed their textbooks. "So," Moody growled, "I've been examining the curriculum. Seems you've covered dark creatures fairly well with Professor Lupin. But you're behind, seriously behind, on dealing with curses." Annabeth watched with growing unease as Moody proceeded to demonstrate 3 unforgivable curses, on spiders, one that controlled minds, one that tortured, and one that killed instantly. The casual display of such power disturbed her, especially when the professor fixed both eyes on Harry during his explanation of how Harry alone had survived the killing curse as an infant. When he announced they would be practicing resisting the Imperious curse, the mind-controlling one, Annabeth tensed. Mental invasion was dangerous territory for a demigod. Their minds contained knowledge of Camp Half-Blood, Olympus, and divine secrets mortals weren't meant to know. "Perhaps I should be excused from this exercise," she said as students began forming a line. "At Athena's academy, we're taught different mental defense techniques that might interact unpredictably with your curse." Moody's magical eye fixed on her with unnerving intensity. "Interesting. American, aren't you? Exchange student?" "Yes, sir." "All the more reason to participate, Chase. Need to know if our methods work on you, don't we? Educational experience for everyone." His tone brooked no argument. Annabeth reluctantly joined the line, watching as student after student performed ridiculous actions under Moody's control, jumping on desks, imitating squirrels, singing national anthems. When Harry's turn came, something unexpected happened. He began to jump as instructed, then visibly fought the compulsion, resulting in an awkward half-jump that sent him crashing into a desk. "Now that's more like it," Moody exclaimed. "Look at that," Potter fought. He fought it, and nearly beat it. "We'll try that again, Potter, and the rest of you, pay attention, watch his eyes, that's where you see it. Excellent, Potter, very good indeed." Harry went 4 more rounds with the curse, each time improving his resistance until he could throw it off entirely. The power required to resist such mental domination was significant, another point in favor of the demigod theory. Then it was Annabeth's turn. She stepped forward, centering herself and drawing on techniques Chiron had taught them for resisting magical influence. As a daughter of Athena, her mental discipline was her greatest strength. "Imperio," Moody growled, pointing his wand directly at her. A floating sensation washed over her, accompanied by a blissful emptiness. All worries about her mission, about Harry, about Camp Half-Blood faded into pleasant nothingness. Then came the voice, "Turn around and recite the Olympian gods in order of power." The oddly specific command triggered warning bells through Annabeth's blissful haze. This wasn't a harmless demonstration command like the others. Moody was fishing for information, specific information about her knowledge of the gods. Annabeth slammed down mental barriers, techniques honed through years of defending her mind against magical influences far older than this wizard's curse. For a moment, she felt Moody push harder, his magical probe searching for cracks in her defenses. "No," she said aloud, her voice steady despite the pressure building behind her eyes. The floating sensation shattered. Annabeth stood firmly in place, neither turning nor reciting anything, her gray eyes locked defiantly on Moody's mismatched ones. The classroom had gone silent. Well, Moody said softly, his magical eye spinning rapidly. "Seems they teach you useful things at that American school after all. Full resistance on the first try. Very interesting, Miss Chase. Very interesting indeed." The way he said her name sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't over. 5 points to Gryffindor, he added, turning to address the class. "You see, Potter and Chase demonstrate what you should all strive for. Constant vigilance. Control of your own mind is the first defense against the dark arts. As the class ended, Annabeth gathered her things quickly, intending to leave before Moody could question her further. Harry caught up with her in the corridor. "That was brilliant," he said with genuine admiration. "Even I couldn't throw it off completely the first time." "Different training," she explained tersely, still disturbed by the specific nature of Moody's command. "Listen, I need to, Miss Chase," Moody's voice interrupted from the classroom doorway. "A word, if you please. About your educational background." Harry glanced between them, clearly sensing the tension. "I can wait for you," he offered. "No need, Potter," Moody growled. "Just a quick administrative matter. She'll catch up." Annabeth gave Harry a reassuring nod. "I'll see you at lunch. We'll talk later, as planned." Harry hesitated, then nodded and continued down the hall with Ron and Hermione, who were already debating the ethics of using the Imperious Curse in a classroom. Annabeth steeled herself and re-entered the classroom. Moody had positioned himself behind his desk, both eyes fixed unblinkingly on her. "Shut the door," he instructed. She did, but remained standing near it, close to an exit, as any well-trained demigod would. "Athena's Academy," Moody began without preamble. "Interesting name for a wizarding school, wouldn't you say?" "It honors magical traditions connected to ancient wisdom," Annabeth replied smoothly. "Many magical schools have classical influences, Hogwarts itself has a Latin motto." "Indeed." Moody's magical eye swiveled, examining her from head to toe as if searching for concealed weapons or secrets. "But most exchange students don't arrive with resistance to the Imperious Curse. Most don't make offerings to the gods at dinner. Most don't carry celestial bronze daggers in enchanted backpacks." Annabeth's blood froze. The magical eye, it must be able to see through the mist, through magical concealment. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, fighting to keep her voice even. "Don't insult my intelligence, Miss Chase." Moody leaned forward. "I've been hunting dark wizards for longer than you've been alive. I know when someone isn't what they appear to be. The question is, what exactly are you, and what do you want with Harry Potter?" Annabeth considered her options rapidly. Denial would be pointless if his eye could truly see through her enchantments. Aggression would only confirm his suspicions. That left partial truth, enough to satisfy without revealing her true mission. "I'm exactly what I appear to be," she said carefully. "A student trained in different magical traditions than those taught at Hogwarts. My presence here is with the full knowledge and permission of Professor Dumbledore." "That doesn't answer my second question," Moody growled. "What is your interest in Potter?" "He's famous even in America," Annabeth replied, which was true enough. "And as someone who's faced dark magic repeatedly, his experiences are valuable to someone studying advanced defensive techniques." Moody stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "You're good," he finally said. "Very good. Carefully constructed answers, technically truthful but revealing nothing. Someone trained you well." He stood abruptly, his wooden leg thumping against the floor as he circled the desk. "I'll be watching you, Chase. One hint, one whisper, that you mean harm to any student at this school, particularly Potter, and you'll discover exactly how I earned my reputation. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Annabeth replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "But your concern is misplaced, Professor. I'm not a threat to Harry Potter." "We'll see," Moody said grimly. "You're dismissed." Annabeth maintained her composure until she was well away from Moody's classroom, then ducked into an empty corridor to collect herself. Her heart pounded as she processed the implications. If Moody could see through magical concealment, her mission had just become significantly more complicated. More troubling was his specific interest in her connection to Harry. How much did he suspect? Did he know about demigods, about Camp Half-Blood? Or was he simply a paranoid XOR overprotective of the boy who lived? Either way, she needed to accelerate her investigation. If Harry Potter was indeed a demigod, the sooner she confirmed it and developed an extraction plan, the better. But first, she needed to contact Chiron. This development changed everything. Finding privacy in a castle full of curious students, watchful teachers, and literal ghosts proved challenging. Annabeth eventually discovered a secluded corner of the library behind the ancient runes section, where towering bookshelves created a natural alcove invisible from the main study areas. She whispered a quick enchantment to discourage interruptions, not enough to raise magical alarms in the castle, but sufficient to make passers-by suddenly remember urgent assignments elsewhere. Then she retrieved her golden drachma and a small prism from her backpack. A beam of afternoon sunlight streamed through a nearby window. Annabeth positioned the prism carefully, creating a small rainbow against the stone wall. "Oh Iris, goddess of the rainbow, accept my offering," she murmured, tossing the drachma into the rainbow where it disappeared in a golden shimmer. "Show me Chiron at Camp Half-Blood." The rainbow's surface rippled, colors swirling until they resolved into an image of the centaur standing on the big house porch, bow in hand as if he'd just returned from archery practice. "Annabeth," he greeted her, his expression immediately serious. "I wasn't expecting contact so soon. Has something happened?" "Several somethings," she replied quietly. "I've made contact with Harry Potter, and there's mounting evidence supporting your theory. He's experiencing dreams of the gods, manifestation of divine energy, and unusual magical outbursts. He's also displaying extraordinary mental resistance and a connection to magical creatures that suggests divine heritage." Chiron stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The signs are certainly consistent with a demigod awakening. Have you confirmed parentage?" "Not definitively," Annabeth admitted. "The lightning scar suggests Zeus, but—" She hesitated. "His eyes, Chiron. They're sea green. Like Percy's." The centaur's brow furrowed. "That is, unexpected. Continue your observations. What of the wizarding authorities? Have you maintained your cover?" "Mostly, but there's a complication." She explained about Moody and his magical eye, the unnerving interrogation, and his specific command during the Imperious Curse. "He suspects something, though I don't think he knows exactly what. He's watching me closely." "This is concerning," Chiron agreed. "Alastair Moody has a formidable reputation even among Hecate's followers. His magical eye is an ancient artifact with properties not fully understood even by its creator." "Should I abort?" Annabeth asked, though the thought of leaving without completing her mission, without helping Harry understand what he was becoming, felt wrong. "No," Chiron decided after a moment's thought. "The situation is delicate but not yet compromised. Maintain your cover, continue gathering evidence, but accelerate your timeline. If Harry Potter truly is awakening to divine heritage, the magical surge could attract monster attention despite Hogwarts protections." "I was thinking the same thing," Annabeth agreed. "He's already mentioned feeling like something inside him is trying to break free. And there's more, the school is hosting some dangerous tournament this year. Harry seems convinced it will put him in danger, based on past experience." "The Triwizard Tournament," Chiron nodded. "Hecate mentioned it in our arrangements. Ancient magic, powerful binding contracts. If Harry is involved, it would complicate extraction," Annabeth finished. "I'll need to determine if he's likely to be drawn in, willing or not." "Indeed." Chiron's expression grew troubled. "Be careful, Annabeth. The intersection of divine and wizarding magic creates unpredictable consequences. And if Harry Potter is indeed what we suspect, his awakening could attract attention from both pantheons." "I understand." She glanced over her shoulder, ensuring they were still alone. "I should go. Harry's expecting to meet with me this afternoon. He's seeking answers about what's happening to him." "Proceed with caution," Chiron advised. "Provide only the information necessary to gain his trust. Full revelation should wait until we're certain of his parentage and have a secure extraction plan." Annabeth nodded, though a twinge of guilt nagged at her. Harry had been honest with her, vulnerable even. Withholding information felt like a betrayal of the fragile trust building between them. One last thing, Chiron added. Hecate has expressed unusual interest in this situation. She's granted you certain privileges within Hogwarts, but her motives remain her own. Be wary of her involvement, direct or indirect. The rainbow began to fade, the connection weakening. I'll contact you again soon, Annabeth promised as Chiron's image dissolved back into ordinary light. She sat back against the bookshelf, mind racing. Hecate's special interest complicated matters further. The goddess of magic maintained separation between her wizarding children and the world of Greek demigods for reasons only she fully understood. Breaking that separation could have consequences beyond Annabeth's mission parameters. And yet, helping Harry understand his heritage, whatever it truly was, felt increasingly important. Not just for Camp Half-Blood's sake, but for his. Annabeth gathered her things and headed to her meeting with Harry, strategies and contingencies forming in her mind. One thing was certain, Harry Potter's life was about to change irrevocably, and she would be the catalyst. The room of requirement wasn't mentioned in any of Hecate's briefing materials, which made Annabeth immediately suspicious when Harry led her to an apparently blank stretch of wall on the castle's 7th floor. Trust me, he said, noting her skepticism. It's the perfect place to talk privately. No one will interrupt us, and not even the ghosts can get in if we don't want them to. He paced 3 times before the wall, his expression concentrated. To Annabeth's amazement, a door materialized where none had existed before, not through mist manipulation or illusion, but actual magical manifestation. How is this possible, she murmured, her architect's mind already analyzing the spatial implications. A room that existed only when needed, that could presumably take any form required, the magical architecture involved was staggering. Hogwarts is full of secrets, Harry said with a hint of pride, pushing the door open. This is the room of requirement. It becomes whatever you need it to be. The room beyond was cozy and simple, a small fire burning in a grate, 2 comfortable armchairs facing each other, a table between them holding a steaming teapot and cups. Windows looked out on what appeared to be the Hogwarts grounds, though Annabeth suspected they weren't actually on an exterior wall. I asked for a place where we could talk privately, Harry explained, taking one of the armchairs. Somewhere comfortable but not too intimate. The slight awkwardness in his tone made Annabeth smile as she took the opposite chair. Harry Potter might be a potential demigod with extraordinary powers, but he was still a teenage boy concerned about giving the wrong impression to a girl. This is perfect, she assured him. No chance of being overheard. None. The room is completely secure. Annabeth accepted the cup of tea he offered, noting that it was prepared exactly as she preferred, a splash of milk, no sugar. The room truly did anticipate needs. So, she began carefully, you wanted to talk about what's happening to you. The dreams, the energy surges, the feeling that something's changing. Harry nodded, his expression serious in the firelight. I've dealt with plenty of weird magic over the years. Possessed teachers, basilisks, time travel, dementors. Soul-sucking wraiths, he explained casually, as if this were perfectly normal. But this feels different. More, fundamental. Like it's not something happening to me, but something happening inside me. Changing me. He set down his cup, extending his hand palm up. With an expression of intense concentration, he summoned the now familiar blue energy. It danced across his fingertips like static electricity. This isn't wizard magic, he said quietly. I'm not using my wand. I'm not casting a spell. It's just, there, beneath the surface, wanting to come out. Annabeth leaned forward, examining the energy without touching it. When did this start? This summer, Harry replied. After the tournament, after Cedric died and Voldemort returned. I was back with my aunt and uncle, feeling angry, trapped, useless, and then one night, I just exploded. Literally. The light fixtures shattered, the windows cracked, and I was surrounded by this blue light. He closed his hand, extinguishing the energy. My relatives were terrified. More than usual, I mean. They already hate anything magical. And the dreams? Annabeth prompted. Those started after the explosion. Almost like it opened a channel to somewhere else. Harry's green eyes reflected the firelight as he stared into memory. I see them arguing on a beach, or sometimes on what looks like a mountain. A woman with stormy gray eyes and a man with a trident. Sometimes there are others, a man with a lightning bolt, a woman with flowing black hair and hunting knives. They argue about fate and prophecies and me. Annabeth's heart raced. Athena, Poseidon, Zeus, Artemis. Harry was dreaming of the Olympian Council. What do they say about you? She asked, keeping her voice neutral despite her excitement. Harry shrugged uncomfortably. It's hard to remember exactly. They speak in this formal, old-fashioned way. But the man with the trident keeps insisting I belong with him, that I was born of two worlds, whatever that means. And the woman with gray eyes argues that I'm too important to the mortal conflict to be claimed yet. Claimed. He'd actually heard them use that specific term. This wasn't coincidence or confused wizarding magic. Harry Potter was dreaming of the gods discussing his demigod status. But which god was his parent? The lightning scar suggested Zeus, but the green eyes and the specific mention of Poseidon's interest complicated the picture. There's more, Harry continued, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. In one dream, the man with the trident said something that's been haunting me. He said, the boy has my blood, whether Zeus acknowledges it or not. The sea does not abandon its own. Annabeth nearly dropped her teacup. Poseidon's son. Not Zeus's. But the lightning scar. Harry, she said carefully, these dreams, these figures you're seeing, they match descriptions of the Greek gods. The woman with gray eyes is Athena, goddess of wisdom. The man with the trident is Poseidon, god of the sea. I figured that much, Harry admitted, surprising her. Hermione has books on classical mythology. I've been researching between nightmares. And what conclusions have you drawn? Annabeth asked, genuinely curious about his interpretation. Harry ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. Either I'm going mad, or... He hesitated, then committed. Or the Greek gods are real, and for some reason, they're interested in me. Specifically Poseidon, who seems to think I'm related to him somehow. He looked directly at Annabeth, challenge in his gaze. That's why I wanted to talk to you. When you made that offering at dinner, when you mentioned divine energy. I thought maybe you knew something about all this. That maybe at your school, you've dealt with this kind of thing before. It was the perfect opening, better than Annabeth could have hoped for. Harry wasn't just receptive to the idea, he'd reached partial conclusions on his own. Confirming his suspicions now would build trust, demonstrate that she had answers he needed. But Chiron's warning echoed in her mind. Full revelation should wait until we're certain of his parentage and have a secure extraction plan. Harry, she began carefully, what you're describing is consistent with certain magical phenomena we study at Athena's Academy. The interaction between divine energy and human magical potential. It wasn't a lie, merely a strategic omission of the full truth. In our tradition, she continued, we acknowledge that the Greek gods are real, powerful beings who occasionally interact with the mortal world. Their energy can manifest in various ways, dreams, visions, unusual abilities that transcend normal magic. Harry leaned forward, hanging on her every word. And what does it mean if someone experiences these things? If someone has dreams about the gods discussing them specifically? Annabeth took a deep breath. Partial truth, she reminded herself. It could mean several things. A divine blessing or curse. A quest or task the gods wish you to undertake. Or. She paused meaningfully. A connection through blood. Harry's eyes widened. You mean, demigods. Like Hercules. Half human, half god. Exactly like that, Annabeth confirmed. Though in modern times, they're less well known. They tend to keep a low profile. And you think I might be one? A demigod? Harry's voice held equal parts wonder and skepticism. That's impossible. I know who my parents were, James and Lily Potter. There are photographs, testimonials from people who knew them. I have my mother's eyes, everyone tells me so. This was the tricky part, the gap in Annabeth's understanding. If Harry was indeed Poseidon's son, how did that square with the established history of James and Lily Potter? I don't have all the answers, she admitted. But divine heritage can manifest in complex ways. Sometimes it remains dormant for generations before appearing. Sometimes the mist, that's what we call the force that obscures divine reality from mortal perception, creates elaborate cover stories. So you're saying my whole life could be a lie? Harry's voice hardened. That my parents, who died protecting me, might not even be my real parents? No, Annabeth backtracked, seeing his distress. I'm saying there might be more to your heritage than you've been told. It doesn't invalidate who your parents were or what they did for you. Harry stood abruptly, pacing before the fire. The blue energy flickered around him again, responding to his emotional state. This is mental, he muttered. Completely mental. I can't be the teacups on the table began to rattle. The windows vibrated in their frames. Harry's power was surging with his distress. Harry, Annabeth said firmly, standing to face him. You need to calm down. Divine energy responds to emotion, especially strong negative emotions like anger and fear. How would you know? He demanded, rounding on her. How do you know so much about this? Are you one of them? A demigod? The direct question caught her off guard. Lying now would damage the trust she'd worked to build, but full disclosure risked compromising her mission if Harry wasn't ready. Before she could decide, a deafening crash shook the room as every window simultaneously shattered. Wind howled through the broken panes, whipping papers and cushions into a cyclone around them. But it wasn't ordinary wind, it smelled of salt and sea spray, carrying the unmistakable energy of divine power. Poseidon's power. Harry stood at the center of the maelstrom, eyes wide with panic as the energy surged beyond his control. Make it stop, he shouted over the howling wind. I can't, I don't know how to. Annabeth fought her way through the wind to reach him, grabbing his shoulders firmly. Harry, look at me, she commanded. Focus on my voice. You control this power, not the other way around. It's part of you, but it doesn't define you. Breathe with me. In, out. She demonstrated steady breathing, maintaining eye contact with him. Gradually, the panic in his eyes receded. The wind began to subside, the blue energy flickering and fading until the room fell silent except for their breathing. How did you know how to do that? Harry asked shakily, his face pale. Annabeth made her decision. Because I am one, she said quietly. A demigod. Daughter of Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Harry stared at her, processing this revelation. You're not really an exchange student, are you? Not exactly, she admitted. I was sent here to find you, to determine if you're a demigod, and to help you understand what that means. Who sent you? His voice was surprisingly steady now, his expression unreadable. Chiron, Activities Director at Camp Half-Blood, a safe haven for demigods in America. He detected unusual divine energy emanating from Hogwarts. Energy that suggested a powerful, unclaimed half-blood. Harry sank back into his armchair, looking suddenly exhausted. So it's true. I'm not entirely human. Being a demigod doesn't make you less human, Annabeth said gently, returning to her own seat. It just means you have abilities and challenges others don't. Believe me, I understand how overwhelming this revelation can be. If what you're saying is true, Harry said slowly, if I am a demigod? Then which god is my parent? Those dreams suggested Poseidon, but that's what we need to confirm, Annabeth explained. The signs are confusing. Your scar suggests Zeus, god of the sky and lightning. But your eyes, your affinity for water magic, and your dreams all point to Poseidon, god of the sea. And what happens once you've confirmed it? Harry asked, a defensive edge entering his voice. You said you were sent to find me. For what purpose? This was the critical moment, the question that could determine whether Harry saw her as an ally or a threat. Typically, when we identify an unclaimed demigod, we bring them to Camp Half-Blood for training, Annabeth explained. Divine heritage comes with significant dangers. Monsters from Greek mythology are real, and they hunt demigods instinctively. The more powerful your divine parent, the stronger you're sent to monsters. You want to take me away from Hogwarts? Harry's voice rose in disbelief. Away from my friends, my education, everything I know. After everything I've been through here, all the ties I have, you expect me to just leave? It's not that simple, Annabeth began, but Harry cut her off. It never is, he said bitterly. Every year, something new. Every year, some new revelation about who I am or what I'm supposed to do. The boy who lived. The chosen one. And now, what, the divine son? Poseidon's heir. His laughter held no humor. Do you know what my greatest wish has always been? To be normal. Just Harry. And now you're telling me I'm even less normal than I thought. Harry, no. He stood again, but without the dangerous energy surge this time. I need to think. This is too much. I understand, Annabeth said, rising as well. Take time to process. But remember, what's happening to you won't stop just because you want it to. The power inside you is awakening, and without proper training, it could be dangerous, to you and everyone around you. Harry paused at the door, not looking back. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't some elaborate deception, some new plot against me? Your instincts, Annabeth said simply. You've survived this long by trusting them. What are they telling you about me? About what's happening to you? He was silent for a long moment. They're telling me that my life just got infinitely more complicated, he finally said. And that I need to be very careful who I trust. With that, he slipped out the door, leaving Annabeth alone in the damaged room. She surveyed the broken windows, scattered papers, and overturned furniture, evidence of power far beyond what a typical wizard should possess. Her mission was progressing, but in ways she hadn't anticipated. Harry Potter was indeed showing all the signs of being a demigod, most likely Poseidon's son, despite the lightning scar. But extracting him would be exponentially more complicated than Chiron had predicted. Harry wasn't just a wizard, he was embedded in a complex web of relationships, responsibilities, and prophecies within the wizarding world. Removing him from that web would cause ripples she couldn't fully predict. And beyond that, a more personal concern nagged at her, was extraction even the right approach? Would Harry be safer, happier at Camp Half-Blood, or did he belong here, in the world where he'd already fought and sacrificed so much? Annabeth sighed, repairing the windows with a quick spell Hecate had provided for her cover. The gods rarely made anything simple, and this mission was proving to be one of her most complex yet. One thing was certain, Harry Potter's divine heritage was awakening, whether he accepted it or not. And whatever came next would change both their worlds forever. Chapter 2, Blood and Magic. Harry avoided Annabeth for 3 days. She spotted him in classes, at meals, and once across the library, but each time he found reasons to be elsewhere: Quidditch discussions with Ron, homework consultations with Hermione, sudden interest in herbology assignments that required his immediate attention in the greenhouses. His friends clearly noticed something amiss but seemed to attribute it to Harry's general moodiness since term began. Annabeth didn't pursue him. Years of training demigods had taught her that pushing rarely helped, especially with new half-bloods confronting their divine heritage. The revelation was always traumatic, upending everything they believed about themselves, their families, their place in the world. Harry's situation was even more complex, given his existing identity as the boy who lived and the burdens that came with it. So she waited, observing from a distance, gathering more information. She attended classes, taking careful notes on wizarding magic and its differences from demigod abilities. She explored the castle, mapping its labyrinthine corridors and identifying potential extraction routes. She befriended Hermione, finding common ground in their intellectual curiosity and love of architecture. And she watched for signs that Harry's awakening divine heritage was continuing to manifest, whether he acknowledged it or not. She didn't have to wait long. The incident happened during potions, a class that even Annabeth, who had faced monsters, gods, and titans, found uniquely stressful. Professor Snape, with his cold eyes and barely concealed contempt for Gryffindors, seemed determined to find fault with her work despite her meticulous precision. Perhaps at Athena's academy, they consider this acceptable, he remarked, hovering over her cauldron of strengthening solution with a curled lip. But I assure you, Miss Chase, that here we expect our salamander blood to be added after the powdered griffin claw, not before. Annabeth bit back a retort, knowing it would only make matters worse. The potions textbook specified no such order, she'd checked 3 times, but contradicting Snape was apparently academic suicide. Yes, Professor, she said neutrally. I'll start over. Across the dungeon, she caught Harry watching the exchange, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met briefly before he turned back to his own potion, which was bubbling an alarming shade of purple rather than the desired turquoise. Snape moved on to his favorite target. Potter, he drawled, explain to me how you've managed to produce what appears to be an excellent shrinking solution when the assignment was clearly a strengthening solution. Harry tensed visibly. I followed the instructions, sir. Did you indeed? Snape's voice dripped with sarcasm. Then perhaps you can explain why your potion is purple when it should be turquoise? Or why it's emitting sparks when it should be producing steam? The class had gone quiet, anticipating the familiar pattern of Snape's cruelty and Harry's defensive responses. But something different happened this time. The surface of Harry's potion began to ripple, though no one was stirring it. The purple liquid darkened, swirling faster of its own accord. Sparks intensified, changing from ordinary orange to a distinctive blue that made Annabeth's heart race. Divine energy. Here, in the potions classroom. Potter, Snape snapped, oblivious to the danger signs, what have you added to this concoction? Nothing, Harry insisted, his eyes fixed on the increasingly volatile potion. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. I don't know why it's doing this. Annabeth recognized what was happening. Harry's emotions, his anger, frustration, the power simmering beneath the surface, were affecting the magical mixture, infusing it with divine energy it wasn't designed to contain. Everyone back, she said sharply, standing and moving toward Harry's table. That potion's destabilizing. Snape turned his glare on her. I don't recall asking for your assessment, Miss Chase. Return to your seat immediately. But several students had already scrambled away from Harry's cauldron, which was now vibrating on the table, blue light emanating from the churning liquid within. Harry, Annabeth said urgently, you need to calm down. Your emotions are affecting the potion. I'm trying, he gritted out, hands clenched at his sides. It's not, I can't, what nonsense is this? Snape demanded, though even he looked concerned now as the cauldron began to levitate several inches above the table. Annabeth reached Harry's side. Look at me, she commanded, keeping her voice low but firm. Remember what we practiced in the room of requirement. Breathe. Focus. The power responds to your emotional state. For a moment, it seemed to work. Harry's breathing steadied, and the cauldron settled back onto the table, the violent churning subsiding slightly. Then Draco Malfoy's voice cut through the tense silence, of course Potter's causing chaos again. Anything for attention, Harry's control shattered. The cauldron exploded with a deafening bang, showering the dungeon with potion and twisted metal fragments. Students screamed, diving for cover behind tables and bags. But the liquid didn't splatter randomly as it should have. Instead, it hovered in midair, coalescing into a swirling mass that resembled a miniature whirlpool, suspended above the remnants of Harry's table. At its center, blue energy pulsed like a heartbeat. "Everybody out," Snape ordered, drawing his wand. "Now." Students didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled for the door, shoving past each other in their haste to escape whatever strange magic was manifesting. "Potter, Chase, stay where you are," Snape commanded as the last students fled. He approached the hovering mass cautiously, wand extended. Finite incantatem. Nothing happened. The spell dissipated harmlessly against the swirling liquid. "That won't work, Professor," Annabeth said, keeping her voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "This isn't ordinary magic. I'm well aware that Potter has once again managed to defy the basic laws of magical practice," Snape replied coldly, though his eyes never left the hovering phenomenon. "The question is how to contain it before it destroys my classroom." "Harry needs to reclaim control of it," Annabeth explained, turning to Harry who stood transfixed, staring at the manifestation of his own uncontrolled power. "It's responding to him, to his energy." "I don't know how," Harry said, his voice strained. "This has never happened before." "Yes, it has," Annabeth corrected him. "In different forms, but it's the same energy you've been experiencing since summer. The same power that shattered the windows in the room of requirement. It's yours, Harry. You can control it." "Miss Chase," Snape interjected sharply, "what precisely do you know about this phenomenon?" "Enough to help contain it," she replied, unwilling to reveal more with the potion's master present. "Harry, extend your hand toward it, not too close. Feel the connection between you and the energy." Despite his obvious reluctance, Harry did as instructed. As his hand neared the swirling mass, the blue light pulsed more intensely, reaching tendrils toward him like it recognized its source. "It's like it's alive," he whispered, fascinated despite his fear. "It's responding to your life force," Annabeth explained. "Now imagine drawing it back into yourself, like reeling in a fishing line. Gentle but firm." Harry closed his eyes, his face a mask of concentration. Slowly, the swirling liquid began to shrink, the blue energy condensing. It moved toward Harry's outstretched hand, not touching but following as he gradually drew his arm back toward his body. With a final pulse of light, the mixture collapsed into a perfect sphere the size of a snitch, hovering an inch above Harry's palm. The blue glow faded, leaving an ordinary-looking globule of purple potion. "Now release it," Annabeth instructed. "Into your empty cauldron." Harry carefully guided the sphere to Hermione's clean cauldron nearby, where it splashed down as normal liquid, all extraordinary properties apparently gone. The dungeon fell silent except for their breathing. Harry looked exhausted but also amazed, staring at his own hand as if seeing it for the first time. "An explanation," Snape demanded, his black eyes moving between them with dangerous intensity. "Now." Harry looked to Annabeth, clearly at a loss for how to explain what had just happened without revealing everything. "It was accidental magic, Professor," she said smoothly. "A rare interaction between Harry's innate magical signature and the salamander blood. We study similar phenomena at Athena's Academy. Accidental magic typically manifests in children before they receive proper training," Snape countered. "Not in fifth-year students who should have learned basic control years ago." "With respect, sir," Annabeth pressed, "magical development isn't always linear. Sometimes new abilities manifest during periods of stress or hormonal change." Snape's expression made it clear he didn't believe a word, but before he could press further, the dungeon door burst open. Professor McGonagall stood in the doorway, wand drawn, with Hermione anxious at her shoulder. "Severus? What's happened?" "Miss Granger says there was an explosion." Her eyes took in the damaged table, scattered ingredients, and the three figures standing in the midst of the chaos. Nothing that Potter and his new American friend couldn't explain, I'm sure, Snape said silkily. Perhaps in your office, rather than my damaged classroom? 20 minutes later, Annabeth and Harry sat before McGonagall's desk, having provided a carefully edited version of events that emphasized accidental magic and omitted any mention of divine energy. This is the third incident this term involving unusual magical manifestations around you, Mr. Potter, McGonagall said, her Scottish accent more pronounced with concern. First the disturbance in the Great Hall, then the broken windows in the 7th-floor corridor, and now this. Harry shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, Professor. I don't know what's causing it. McGonagall's shrewd eyes turned to Annabeth. Miss Chase, you seemed remarkably knowledgeable about how to contain the situation. One might almost think you'd encountered such phenomena before. We study various forms of magical manifestation at my school, Annabeth replied, the explanation feeling increasingly thin with each repetition. Harry's case has similarities to conditions we've documented. Indeed. McGonagall's expression made it clear she suspected there was more to the story. And these similarities led you to befriend Mr. Potter specifically, I presume? The direct question caught Annabeth off guard. McGonagall was sharper than she'd given her credit for. I befriended Harry because we were sorted into the same house, she answered carefully. The similarities became apparent later. McGonagall adjusted her spectacles. Well, whatever the case, these incidents cannot continue. The Triwizard delegations from Beauxbatons and Durmstrang arrive tomorrow evening. Hogwarts' reputation is at stake. Yes, Professor, Harry said, looking genuinely contrite. Miss Chase, since you appear to have insight into these episodes, I am assigning you to work with Mr. Potter on controlling them. Consider it an interschool research project, if you will. Annabeth couldn't have asked for a better outcome. I'd be happy to help, Professor. Excellent. You are both excused from potions for the remainder of the day. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. Harry, I understand that you've faced extraordinary challenges throughout your time at Hogwarts. If there is anything at all, that you wish to discuss, my door is always open. Thank you, Professor, Harry mumbled, though he didn't look inclined to take her up on the offer. They left McGonagall's office in silence, walking aimlessly through the corridors until they reached a quiet courtyard. The October air was crisp, leaves skittering across the stone pavement in the gentle breeze. You can't keep avoiding me, Annabeth said finally, sitting on a bench beneath an ancient oak. Not if you want to learn to control this. Harry remained standing, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I know. Have you been having more dreams? She asked, watching him closely. He nodded reluctantly. Almost every night now. They're getting more urgent. Like they're trying to tell me something important, but I can't quite understand it. That's common, Annabeth told him. Demigod dreams are rarely straightforward. Their messages filtered through multiple layers of reality. Harry flinched slightly at the word demigod, but didn't argue the terminology this time. Progress, of a sort. In the latest one, he said quietly, I was standing on the shore of a lake, not the Hogwarts lake, somewhere else. The water was perfectly clear, like glass. The man with the trident, Poseidon, was there, but he wasn't arguing this time. He was sad. He touched the water, and it formed an image of a woman with red hair and green eyes. Your mother, Annabeth guessed. Harry nodded. He said, the protection she gave you comes from love, not blood. Remember that when the time comes. Annabeth frowned, turning this new information over in her mind. That's cryptic, even for a divine message. Welcome to my life, Harry said with a hint of his normal humor. Nothing's ever straightforward, is it? Not when gods are involved, she agreed. But this does suggest Poseidon had some connection to your mother, which supports the theory that he's your divine parent. Harry sank onto the bench beside her, suddenly looking very young and uncertain. If that's true, if Poseidon is my father, then what does that make James Potter? Everyone says I look just like him, except for my eyes. This was the piece that still didn't fit, the contradiction between Harry's established history and the evidence of divine parentage. I don't know, Annabeth admitted. There are possibilities. The mist could have created a false narrative, or perhaps James Potter was actually a son or legacy of Poseidon himself, making you a second-generation demigod. Or maybe this is all a massive mistake, Harry suggested, though without much conviction. Maybe I'm just a wizard with strange abilities and weird dreams. The explosion in potions wasn't normal wizarding magic, Annabeth pointed out gently. Even Snape could see that. Harry sighed, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. I know. I felt the difference. When I'm using my wand, magic flows through me like a channel, directed and controlled. But this, it's like it's part of me, my blood and bones, waiting to be unleashed. That's exactly what divine energy feels like, Annabeth confirmed. It's not something you channel from outside, it's innate, part of your very essence. They sat in silence for a moment, watching leaves spiral down from the oak tree. So what now? Harry finally asked. McGonagall wants you to help me control these outbursts. But if I really am what you think I am, is control even possible? Absolutely, Annabeth assured him. Every demigod learns to master their abilities. It takes training and practice, but it's entirely achievable. She hesitated, then added, Camp Half-Blood specializes in that training. Harry's expression closed immediately. I'm not leaving Hogwarts. I'm not asking you to, Annabeth said, though the mission parameters still lingered in the back of her mind. For now, let's focus on control techniques. We can use the room of requirement for practice. All right, Harry agreed after a moment's consideration. But we do this my way. No gods, no talk of extraction or camps or leaving. Just practical control. Agreed, Annabeth said, relieved to have broken through his avoidance. We'll start tonight, after dinner. As if summoned by their planning, a familiar voice called across the courtyard, Harry. Annabeth. Hermione hurried toward them, a massive leather-bound book clutched to her chest, her face flushed with excitement. Ron trailed behind her, looking significantly less enthused. I've been looking everywhere for you both, she exclaimed, dropping onto the bench beside Annabeth. After what happened in potions, I went to the library. Shocking, Ron muttered, earning himself a glare. And I found the most fascinating references, Hermione continued, opening the ancient tome to a marked page. Look at this. Annabeth leaned forward, examining the yellowed parchment. The text was in ancient Greek, with illustrations of familiar symbols, a trident, an owl, a lightning bolt. Convergences of divine and mortal magic, Annabeth translated automatically, then caught herself. Most wizards wouldn't be able to read ancient Greek fluently. Hermione's eyes widened. You can read it? I've been using a translation charm, but it's imperfect with texts this old. Part of our curriculum at Athena's Academy, Annabeth explained smoothly. Ancient languages are useful for certain magical traditions. Hermione nodded, excitement undiminished. This book suggests that wizarding magic and something called divine energy weren't always separate systems. They diverged around 1000 BCE, when Hecate, the goddess of magic, created a distinct magical community using specially crafted focuses. Wands, Ron supplied, showing he'd been paying more attention than his expression suggested. Exactly, Hermione beamed at him. Before that, certain witches and wizards, those with particularly strong magical cores, were considered children or blessed of the gods. Harry and Annabeth exchanged a meaningful glance. That's just mythology, though, Harry said carefully. Ancient explanations for magic before they understood it properly. That's what I thought initially, Hermione agreed, but the text is quite specific. It claims that Hecate's creation of wand-based magic was a deliberate separation from divine power structures. Listen to this part, and Hecate, weary of her children being claimed by greater powers, created for them tools of focus and direction, that they might command their own magic without divine interference. Thus was born the wizarding world, separate from the half-bloods who continued in the old ways. Annabeth struggled to maintain a neutral expression. This was dangerous territory, information that blurred the carefully maintained boundaries between the wizarding and demigod worlds. Half-bloods, Ron repeated, frowning. Like Muggleborns, you mean? No, Hermione said slowly, her brilliant mind clearly making connections. I think it means something else entirely. In Greek mythology, a half-blood would be a demigod, half human, half divine. She looked up, her gaze moving between Harry and Annabeth with growing suspicion. The book goes on to describe how certain individuals might manifest both forms of magic, especially those with complicated heritage. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. It's just an old book, Hermione, Ron said, breaking the tension. Probably written before they properly understood how magic works. Perhaps, Hermione conceded, though she didn't look convinced. But it might explain what happened in potions today. Harry, the energy you were manifesting wasn't like any spell I've ever seen. It was more like, well, like the descriptions of divine power in this text. Harry looked cornered, his expression a mix of alarm and resignation. Annabeth needed to redirect this conversation before it went too far. It's an interesting theory, she said, taking the book from Hermione and examining the pages with apparent academic curiosity. At Athena's Academy, we study historical magical systems comparatively. The idea that modern wizardry evolved from earlier, more primal forms of magic is well established. But you don't believe it's literally connected to Greek gods, Hermione pressed, her eyes sharp. I believe that ancient cultures interpreted magical phenomena through their own cultural lens, Annabeth replied carefully. The gods represented aspects of natural and magical power that they couldn't otherwise explain. It wasn't quite a lie, the gods did indeed represent fundamental cosmic forces, but it wasn't the full truth either. Hermione seemed about to argue further when Ron interrupted. As fascinating as ancient magical theory is, he said with the air of someone who found it anything but, the Beauxbatons and Durmstrang students arrive tomorrow, and I heard they're announcing the Triwizard Tournament details at the feast. That's a bit more exciting than dusty old books, isn't it? The tournament, Harry muttered, his expression darkening. I'd almost forgotten. Cheer up, mate, Ron said, clapping him on the shoulder. It'll be brilliant watching someone else risk their neck for a change. And with that age restriction, you're in the clear. That's what we thought last time, Harry reminded him grimly. Dumbledore's taken extra precautions, Hermione assured him. After what happened? Well, there's no way anyone underage could possibly enter. Harry didn't look reassured. When has that ever stopped disaster from finding me? Annabeth understood his concern. If Harry was indeed a demigod, particularly one with a powerful divine parent like Poseidon, his natural propensity for attracting trouble would be magnified. The tournament, with its ancient magic and dangerous tasks, would be a beacon for that trouble. We should head to dinner, Hermione suggested, clearly trying to lighten the mood. And Harry, you should rest. You look exhausted after that episode in potions. I'll join you in a bit, Annabeth said, holding up the book. I'd like to look at this a little more, if you don't mind. Of course, Hermione beamed, pleased at finding someone who shared her academic interests. Just return it to me when you're finished. It's actually from the restricted section, Professor McGonagall gave me a note. As the trio departed, Annabeth remained on the bench, rapidly scanning the ancient text. This was a significant discovery, a documented historical account of the separation between wizarding and divine magic. If Hermione continued this line of research, she might uncover truths that Hecate had kept hidden for millennia. The question was, what would that mean for her mission? For Harry? For the careful balance between these magical worlds? She needed to contact Chiron again, and soon. The room of requirement took a different form for their evening training session. Gone were the comfortable armchairs and cozy fire, replaced by a spacious training area reminiscent of Camp Half-Blood's arena. The floor was padded, the ceiling high, and various training implements lined the walls: weights, staffs, practice dummies. "I didn't ask for this," Harry said as they entered, looking around with confusion. "I did," Annabeth explained. "Physical training helps with energy control. The connection between body and power is fundamental for demigods." Harry flinched again at the term but didn't object. "I'm not much for physical combat," he admitted. "Wizards duel with wands, not, whatever those are." He gestured to a rack of training weapons. "You won't need those yet," Annabeth assured him. "We're starting with basics. Breathing, centering, channeling energy consciously rather than explosively." For the next hour, she led him through exercises designed for new campers at Camp Half-Blood, minus the specifics of Greek combat training. They focused on breath control, visualization techniques, and small energy manipulations, creating a tiny flame in his palm, raising droplets of water from a bowl, generating small currents of air. Harry proved to be a quick study, his natural magical ability translating well to these more primal exercises. By the end of the session, he could maintain a small sphere of water hovering above his palm for nearly a minute before his concentration wavered. "That's exceptional progress," Annabeth told him as they took a water break. "Most new campers," she caught herself. "Most beginners take days to achieve that level of control." Harry wiped sweat from his forehead, looking pleased despite his exhaustion. "It feels right, somehow. Like I've always known how to do this but forgot." "Divine abilities are innate," Annabeth explained. "They're in your blood, your DNA. We're just reawakening what's always been there." Harry's expression turned thoughtful as he took a long drink of water. "When I was 11, before I knew I was a wizard, strange things would happen around me when I was angry or scared. Windows would shatter, objects would move. Dumbledore called it accidental magic." "It probably was," Annabeth said. "You have both magical systems operating within you, wizarding magic, channeled through your wand, and divine energy, channeled through your very being. And that's unusual. Even for people like me." He still couldn't bring himself to say demigod. "Very unusual," she confirmed. "The separation between wizarding and divine magic has been maintained for millennia. Few individuals cross that boundary." Harry absorbed this information silently, his green eyes troubled. Finally, he asked the question Annabeth had been expecting since their conversation in the courtyard. "That book Hermione found, is it accurate? Did Hecate deliberately separate wizards from the gods?" Annabeth chose her words carefully. "The broad strokes are correct, yes. Hecate created the wizarding world as a protected space for her magical children, giving them wands to focus their abilities independently of divine power structures." "But why?" Harry pressed. "What was she protecting them from?" "The gods can be demanding of their children," Annabeth said diplomatically. "Their attention isn't always beneficial. Hecate wanted her magical humans to develop their own society, their own rules and structures, without Olympian interference. And yet here you are," Harry observed, "interfering on Olympus's behalf." His perception startled her. "That's, not exactly, isn't it?" Harry set down his water bottle, his expression hardening. "You were sent to find me, to determine if I'm a demigod, to bring me to this camp if I am. How is that not interference?" Annabeth sighed, recognizing the trap she'd walked into. "It's complicated. The barriers between our worlds have always been permeable to some degree. When someone manifests clear signs of divine heritage within the wizarding world, it creates concerns." "For whom?" Harry challenged. "The gods who apparently didn't care about my existence for 15 years. Or for you and this Camp Half-Blood, who suddenly decided I belong with you instead of here?" The accusation stung, partly because Annabeth had been wrestling with similar questions herself. "For you," she said finally. Divine heritage comes with risks that wizarding education doesn't prepare you for. Monsters that hunt half-bloods by scent. Prophecies that can shape your destiny. Powers that can destroy you if not properly trained. Harry laughed bitterly. So nothing new, then. I've faced basilisks and dragons, dementors and dark lords. I've had prophecies hanging over my head since before I was born. What could possibly be worse about the divine version? Annabeth's response was cut short by a low, rumbling growl that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Both of them froze, instinctively reaching for their respective weapons, Harry's wand, Annabeth's concealed dagger. What was that? Harry whispered, scanning the room. I don't know, Annabeth murmured, every sense on high alert. The room can't create living creatures, can it? No, it shouldn't be able to. The growl came again, louder this time, followed by a scratching sound like massive claws against stone. It wasn't coming from inside the room, Annabeth realized, but from the corridor beyond. Something's out there, she said, moving toward the door. Something that shouldn't be. Wait, Harry caught her arm. If it's dangerous, it is, Annabeth confirmed grimly. That's not a normal creature. That's a monster, Harry. And it's hunting. The blood drained from Harry's face. Hunting, me? Probably, she admitted. Your divine energy is manifesting more strongly now. It creates a scent that monsters can track. But Hogwarts has protections, Harry argued. Magical barriers, enchantments to keep dangerous creatures out. Against wizarding threats, yes, Annabeth agreed. But this is something different. Something from my world, not yours. As if to confirm her assessment, a deafening roar shook the door, followed by the impact of a massive body slamming against it. The wood splintered but held, for now. We need to move, Annabeth decided, drawing her celestial bronze dagger from its hidden sheath. That door won't hold it for long. What is it? Harry demanded, his wand gripped tightly in his suddenly sweaty palm. I'm not sure yet, Annabeth admitted, but based on the sound and the force, another impact shook the door, causing a hinge to tear partially from the stone. I'd guess a Nemeian lion or something similarly powerful. A what? Mythological monster, nearly invulnerable skin, killed by Hercules as one of his 12 labors, Annabeth explained tersely. We need to get out of here and lead it away from the populated areas of the castle. Harry stared at her in disbelief. You want to run toward the monster? Away from students who could get hurt, she corrected. And toward space where we can fight it properly. This room is too confined. The door shuddered under another massive impact, wood splintering further. How do we fight something with invulnerable skin? Harry asked, his practical nature asserting itself despite the bizarre situation. Annabeth held up her dagger. Celestial bronze. One of the few materials that can harm monsters. For you, she tossed him a bronze-tipped spear from the wall rack, which he caught awkwardly. This should work. Aim for the mouth or eyes, the vulnerable points. I've never used a spear in my life, Harry protested. Can't I just use magic? Regular spells might slow it down but won't kill it, Annabeth explained quickly. But actually, your divine abilities might be effective. Water, especially, if Poseidon is your father, you'd have power over it. Harry's expression was a mix of disbelief and determination. Right. Water. Invulnerable mythological lions. Just another Tuesday at Hogwarts. A final, tremendous crash sent the door flying off its hinges. In the doorway stood a monster straight from ancient legend, a lion 3 times the size of a normal beast, with golden fur that gleamed like metal in the torchlight. Its eyes burned with supernatural fire, and its teeth were serrated daggers the length of Annabeth's forearm. Definitely a Nemeian lion, she confirmed, shifting into a fighting stance. Remember, aim for the mouth when it roars. The lion surveyed them with ancient malice, its gaze fixing on Harry with predatory focus. It could sense his divine heritage, his power, the very thing that had drawn it here, through whatever weakened point in Hogwarts' defenses had permitted its entry. Any other helpful tips? Harry asked, his voice remarkably steady given the circumstances. They're quick but not very strategic, Annabeth replied, slowly circling to draw the beast's attention. They rely on strength and invulnerability rather than tactics. We can use that. The lion roared, a sound so powerful it seemed to vibrate the air itself. Without warning, it pounced, not at Annabeth with her visible weapon, but at Harry, its true prey. Harry's reflexes saved him. He dove sideways, rolling awkwardly with the spear still clutched in one hand, his wand in the other. The lion crashed into a rack of training equipment, sending wooden staffs and bronze shields clattering across the floor. Stupefy! Harry shouted, sending a jet of red light from his wand. The spell struck the lion's flank but dissipated harmlessly against its magical hide. Bronze! Annabeth reminded him, darting forward to slash at the beast's face. Her dagger scraped against its cheek but couldn't penetrate the golden fur. The lion swatted at her with a massive paw. Annabeth ducked beneath it, feeling the air displacement as claws passed inches above her head. She rolled between the monster's legs, coming up behind it to stab at its haunches, again without effect. This wasn't working. They needed a new strategy. The lion rounded on her, jaws opening in another earth-shaking roar. Annabeth prepared to dodge again, but then Harry was there, thrusting the bronze-tipped spear directly into the creature's open mouth. The lion recoiled with a choked growl, golden ichor, the blood of immortal beings, dripping from its wounded palate. The spear had snapped, leaving the bronze head embedded in the roof of the monster's mouth. Good shot. Annabeth called. But we need more than that to kill it. The injured lion was now doubly dangerous, enraged by pain and humiliation. It charged at Harry, who barely managed to scramble out of its path. His sleeve tore as a claw caught the fabric, missing flesh by millimeters. They needed water, Annabeth realized. If Harry truly was Poseidon's son, water would amplify his abilities dramatically. Can you conjure water? She shouted as she fainted left, drawing the lion's attention momentarily away from Harry. Not with a spell. He called back, sending another ineffective stunning charm at the beast. Not with magic, with your divine energy. Annabeth ducked another swipe. Remember the training. Feel it inside you, like you did with the hovering water. Harry looked doubtful but closed his eyes briefly, his face a mask of concentration despite the chaos around him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air temperature dropped suddenly. Moisture condensed on the stone walls, gathering into rivulets that defied gravity, flowing upward and inward toward Harry. Water pipes groaned somewhere distant, and with a crack of breaking metal, a geyser erupted through the stone floor directly beneath the Nemeian lion. The beast yowled in surprise as it was launched upward, suspended momentarily on the powerful jet of water. Harry's eyes snapped open, now glowing with the same blue energy Annabeth had seen during his previous episodes. He extended a hand toward the suspended lion, and the water responded, wrapping around the creature in coiling tentacles that constricted its massive limbs. The mouth! Annabeth shouted, seizing the opportunity. Force its jaws open. Harry didn't speak, didn't even nod, but the water obeyed his unspoken command. Liquid tendrils pried at the lion's mouth, forcing its jaws apart despite its thrashing resistance. Annabeth didn't waste the opening. She leapt forward, propelling herself off a broken training dummy to gain height, and drove her celestial bronze dagger directly into the back of the monster's throat. The Nemeian lion convulsed violently, nearly dislodging her before Harry's water bonds tightened further, holding it immobile. Golden ichor gushed around Annabeth's blade as she twisted it deeper, severing immortal tissues designed to resist any ordinary weapon. With a final, gurgling roar, the monster dissolved into golden dust, showering both of them in the glittering remains of its essence. The water that had held it splashed to the ground, soaking the training room floor. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing. What, the actual, hell, was that?" Harry gasped, sinking to his knees in the puddle, the blue glow fading from his eyes. "That," Annabeth said, retrieving her dagger from where it had clattered to the floor after the monster dissolved, "was your first monster kill. Congratulations. Most demigods don't start with something as formidable as a Nemeian lion." Harry stared at her, then at the golden dust still settling around them, then at his own hands. "I controlled the water," he said wonderingly. "Not with a spell. I just wanted it, and it came." "Hydrokinesis," Annabeth confirmed. "Power over water. One of Poseidon's signature abilities, passed to his children." "So it's true," Harry whispered. "I really am his son." "The evidence is pretty compelling," Annabeth agreed gently, crouching beside him. "Your eyes, your affinity for water, your dreams, and now this. A child of Poseidon would have instinctive control over water, especially in moments of extreme stress." Harry was silent for a long moment, processing this confirmation of everything he'd been reluctant to accept. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "So James Potter wasn't my father. My whole life has been a lie." "We don't know that for certain," Annabeth countered, though the evidence was increasingly difficult to dispute. "There could be explanations we haven't considered." Harry wasn't listening. All those people who said I looked just like him, that I had my mother's eyes, were they lying? Was Dumbledore lying? Did he know? "I don't have those answers," Annabeth admitted. "But we need to get out of here. That monster may have been alone, but we can't count on it. And someone will have heard the commotion." As if on cue, voices echoed from the corridor outside, alarm shouts, the sound of running feet. Professors responding to the disturbance. "We need a cover story," Annabeth said urgently. "We can't tell them about the Nemeian lion or your divine heritage." "Boggart," Harry suggested immediately. "They transform into what you fear most. We could say we were practicing defense against the dark arts and it got out of control." "Perfect," Annabeth agreed, impressed by his quick thinking. "Let me handle most of the talking." She had barely finished speaking when Professor McGonagall appeared in the doorway, wand drawn, with Snape and Moody close behind her. "Potter. Chase!" McGonagall exclaimed, taking in the destroyed room with wide eyes. "What in Merlin's name happened here?" "Training accident, Professor," Annabeth explained, adopting a contrite expression. "You assigned me to help Harry control his magical surges, so we were practicing with controlled scenarios. We used a boggart from the defense classroom," Harry added. "But when it transformed, I had a reaction. Like in potions. The magical surge damaged the room," Annabeth continued smoothly, "but we managed to contain it. The boggart was destroyed in the process." McGonagall looked skeptical, but Moody's magical eye was scanning the room with disturbing thoroughness, lingering on the golden dust that still sparkled on their clothes and the puddles of water across the floor. "Curious," he growled. "Very curious. Boggarts don't usually leave residue when destroyed. Nor do they typically cause water damage." "The water was my fault," Harry said quickly. "My magic manifested as some kind of water surge. I'm not sure why." Snape's cold eyes moved between them suspiciously. "And you expect us to believe that a simple boggart caused this level of destruction? Broke stone and tore metal fixtures from the walls?" "Not the boggart itself," Annabeth clarified. "Harry's magical response to it. We've been working on channeling the energy constructively, but we're still in the early stages." McGonagall sighed, looking suddenly tired. "This cannot continue, Mr. Potter. The delegations arrive tomorrow. We cannot have unexplained magical incidents disrupting the tournament proceedings." "I understand, Professor," Harry said, genuine regret in his voice. "I'm trying to control it, really." "Perhaps," Snape suggested silkily, "Potter should be excused from tournament events entirely. For safety reasons." "That won't be necessary, Severus," McGonagall replied firmly. Mr. Potter and Miss Chase will simply need to accelerate their control exercises. She fixed them both with a stern look. Under proper supervision from now on. I will speak with Professor Flitwick about assisting you. Yes, Professor, they chorused. Now, return to Gryffindor Tower immediately, she instructed. And for goodness sake, clean yourselves up before anyone sees you in this state. As they hurried from the destroyed room, Annabeth felt Moody's magical eye following them. He knew. Or at least, he suspected far more than he was saying. That would be a problem for another day. For now, they had more immediate concerns. We need to talk, Harry said as soon as they were out of earshot. Not just about control exercises. About everything. The lion, the gods, my parentage. All of it. Agreed, Annabeth said, but not tonight. You're physically and emotionally exhausted, and we both need to process what just happened. Tomorrow then, Harry insisted. After the welcoming feast for the delegations. And I want Ron and Hermione there too. Annabeth hesitated. Harry, involving more people complicates things. The boundary between our worlds exists for a reason. They're my best friends, Harry said firmly. They've stood by me through everything. If I'm going to deal with this, I need them with me. Annabeth recognized the determination in his eyes. This wasn't a point he would concede. All right, she agreed reluctantly. Tomorrow night, with Ron and Hermione. But Harry, be prepared. Once we have this conversation, nothing goes back to how it was before. Nothing's been normal since you arrived, Harry pointed out with a hint of his old humor. Might as well embrace the chaos. As they climbed the stairs toward Gryffindor Tower, Annabeth wondered what Chiron would say about this development. The mission parameters had been clear: assess, confirm, extract if possible. Not, reveal the existence of Camp Half-Blood to the wizarding world's most famous teenager and his two best friends. But then, nothing about this mission had gone according to plan from the start. And after witnessing Harry's power firsthand, the way he had instinctively controlled water to subdue a Nemeian lion on his first encounter, she was increasingly certain that traditional approaches wouldn't work here. Harry Potter wasn't just any demigod. And his place in the world might be more complex than even Chiron had anticipated. The Beauxbatons delegation arrived in a powder-blue carriage pulled by enormous flying horses. The Durmstrang contingent emerged from the depths of the lake in a ghostly ship with skeletal masts. Under normal circumstances, these spectacles would have captivated Annabeth's architectural and strategic mind. Instead, she found herself watching Harry throughout the welcoming ceremonies, noting how the water from the lake seemed to ripple in response to his presence at the shore, how his eyes tracked the Durmstrang ship with unusual intensity. Son of the sea god, recognizing his father's domain. Harry himself seemed distracted, his thoughts clearly elsewhere despite Ron's excitement about meeting Victor Crumb, the famous Quidditch player among the Durmstrang students. Only Hermione noticed his preoccupation, shooting concerned glances his way throughout the elaborate feast that followed the arrivals. When Dumbledore finally unveiled the Goblet of Fire, an ancient wooden cup filled with blue-white flames that would select the champions, Annabeth felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air filtering through the Great Hall's windows. The Goblet of Fire, Dumbledore announced, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. An impartial judge that will select one champion from each school to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. Those wishing to enter must write their name and school on a slip of parchment and drop it into the goblet. You have 24 hours to submit your names. Tomorrow night, the goblet will return the names of the 3 champions it has judged most worthy. He waved his wand, conjuring a glowing circle around the goblet. To ensure that no underage students yield to temptation, I will be drawing an age line around the Goblet of Fire. No one under the age of 17 will be able to cross this line. Protests erupted from younger students, particularly the Weasley twins, but Harry remained silent, watching the goblet with an unreadable expression. Harry? Hermione prompted quietly. You're miles away. Just thinking about last time, he replied, his voice equally low. "When my name came out of the goblet despite all the precautions." "That won't happen again," she assured him. "Dumbledore's taken extra measures. Moody's inspecting every student who submits their name. The magical contracts are being verified by an independent committee." Harry nodded absently, but Annabeth could see he wasn't convinced. After everything he'd experienced, his instincts were telling him to prepare for trouble, and after last night's monster attack, she couldn't disagree. As students began to disperse after the feast, Ron and Hermione lingered with Harry and Annabeth at the Gryffindor table. "So," Ron began awkwardly, "Harry mentioned you wanted to talk to us about something important." "Something about what happened in the room of requirement last night?" "Not here," Annabeth cautioned, glancing around at the still crowded hall. "Too many ears." "We could use the room again," Hermione suggested. Harry shook his head. "It's probably still destroyed from last night, and even if it's repaired, the professors will be watching it now." "I know a place," Ron said unexpectedly. "The boathouse. No one goes there except for the first night arrivals, and now that the delegations are here, it'll be empty." "Perfect," Annabeth agreed. "After curfew? Less chance of being interrupted." Hermione looked scandalized. "We're prefects, Ron. We can't be caught out after curfew." "Then don't get caught," Harry suggested with a hint of mischief. "You've managed it for 4 years, I think you can handle one more night." "This had better be important," Hermione grumbled, though her curious expression belied her reluctance. "It is," Harry assured her, suddenly serious. "Trust me, you'll want to hear this." They arranged to meet at 11, when the castle would be largely quiet. Harry would bring his invisibility cloak for himself and Ron, while Hermione and Annabeth would use a prefect patrol as cover to reach the grounds. As they left the Great Hall, Annabeth caught sight of Moody watching them from the staff table, his magical eye following their movement with unnerving precision. She would need to be careful tonight. The last thing they needed was further scrutiny from the paranoid Exor. The boathouse was surprisingly peaceful at night. Moonlight filtered through high windows, casting silver patterns across the dark water that lapped gently against the wooden dock. The boats themselves, which had carried the first years across the lake at the start of term, bobbed silently at their moorings. Annabeth arrived with Hermione 10 minutes before the appointed time. The bushy-haired prefect had been surprisingly adept at avoiding detection, using her legitimate patrol route to reach the entrance hall before veering toward the grounds with a confidence that suggested this wasn't her first clandestine outing. "Harry and Ron should be here soon," Hermione said, settling onto a bench near the water's edge. "The cloak slows them down a bit, especially now that they're both so tall." Annabeth nodded, using the time to gather her thoughts. This conversation would require careful navigation, revealing enough to explain the monster attack and Harry's abilities without unnecessarily exposing Camp Half-Blood or the broader implications of the divine world's existence. "You know, don't you?" Hermione asked suddenly, her perceptive eyes fixed on Annabeth. "What's happening to Harry? The changes, the strange magic, the dreams he won't talk about." Annabeth hesitated. "I have theories," she allowed. "Based on that book I found," Hermione pressed. "About divine and mortal magic. About half-bloods." Before Annabeth could respond, the boathouse door creaked open seemingly on its own, then Harry and Ron materialized as the invisibility cloak was pulled away. "No one followed us," Harry confirmed, stowing the silvery fabric in his pocket. "Though Mrs. Norris gave us a suspicious look on the 3rd floor." "She always looks suspicious," Ron pointed out, dropping onto the bench beside Hermione. "It's her default expression." "We're not here to discuss Filch's cat," Hermione reminded them, turning expectant eyes to Harry and Annabeth. "We're here because something significant is happening, and I think it's time we all had the complete truth." Harry glanced at Annabeth, a silent question in his eyes. How much should they reveal? She gave a slight nod, granting him permission to lead the conversation. "Something attacked us last night," Harry began without preamble. "In the room of requirement." Not a boggart like we told the professors, but a real monster. A Nemeian lion, Annabeth called it. Ron's face scrunched in confusion. A what? From Greek mythology, Hermione supplied immediately. A lion with impenetrable golden fur, killed by Hercules as one of his 12 labors. Her eyes widened. But that's just a myth, isn't it? As much a myth as magic is to muggles, Annabeth replied carefully. The magical world you know, wizards, wands, spells, exists alongside another magical reality, one based in ancient divine power. The Greek gods, the monsters of legend, the heroes of myth, they're all real. The statement hung in the air for a moment, Ron and Hermione processing this revelation with varying degrees of shock and skepticism. Right, Ron said slowly. And you know this because? Because I'm part of that world, Annabeth explained. I'm a demigod, daughter of Athena, goddess of wisdom. I wasn't sent to Hogwarts as an ordinary exchange student. I was sent to investigate unusual divine energy emanating from within the wizarding world. From Harry, Hermione concluded, the pieces clicking into place with remarkable speed. The strange outbursts, the blue energy, the water in the room of requirement, it's divine magic, isn't it? Not wizarding magic at all. Harry nodded solemnly. According to Annabeth, and based on everything that's happened recently, I'm not just a wizard. I'm a demigod too. Specifically. He took a deep breath, a son of Poseidon, god of the sea. Ron's jaw dropped. Bloody hell, mate. You don't do things by halves, do you? But that's impossible, Hermione argued, though with less conviction than her words suggested. We know your parents were James and Lily Potter. There are records, photographs, testimonies from people who knew them. I don't have all the answers about how it works, Annabeth admitted. The intersection of wizarding and divine heritage is unprecedented in my experience. But the evidence is becoming undeniable. Harry has powers that no ordinary wizard possesses, control over water, resistance to certain magics, dreams of the gods discussing him specifically. And the monster last night, it came for me, Harry added. Annabeth says monsters can sense divine energy, can track demigods by a sort of magical scent. As my powers have been awakening, that scent has grown stronger. Which means you're in danger, Hermione concluded, her brilliant mind rapidly processing implications. More danger than usual, I mean. Essentially, yes, Annabeth confirmed. Untrained demigods rarely survive to adulthood unless they reach Camp Half-Blood, a training facility in America designed to protect and prepare half-bloods for the challenges of their heritage. Ron's eyes narrowed suspiciously. So that's why you're really here? To take Harry away to this camp? That was the original mission, Annabeth acknowledged, seeing no benefit in lying at this point. Assess whether Harry is truly a demigod, confirm his divine parent if possible, and extract him to Camp Half-Blood for proper training. And now? Hermione asked quietly, her intelligent eyes fixed on Annabeth's face. Now I understand that the situation is more complex than Chiron, my mentor, anticipated. Harry isn't just any demigod. He's the boy who lived, with responsibilities and connections in the wizarding world that can't simply be severed. Harry looked relieved at her understanding. So you're not still trying to convince me to leave Hogwarts? I think we need a different approach, Annabeth said carefully. One that acknowledges both aspects of your heritage. But that doesn't change the fundamental reality, you need training to control your divine abilities, especially now that they're manifesting more strongly. And the monsters? Ron asked, his practical nature focusing on the immediate threat. If they can track Harry by his demigod scent or whatever. How do we protect him here? Hogwarts has its own powerful protections, Annabeth acknowledged. They weren't designed with Greek monsters in mind, but they still provide significant barriers. The Nemeian lion likely only found a way in because Harry's divine energy has been spiking erratically, creating temporary weaknesses in those barriers. Which is why control is so important, Hermione realized. The better Harry can manage these new abilities, the less likely he is to inadvertently create openings for monsters. Exactly, Annabeth confirmed, impressed by her quick understanding. That's why the training exercises are critical, even if extraction isn't the immediate goal. Harry had been quiet, absorbing the conversation with a thoughtful expression. Now he spoke, his voice steady despite the weight of what they were discussing. "There's something else we need to consider," he said. "The Triwizard Tournament. Last time, it was used to get to me, to kidnap me, to use my blood in a ritual that brought Voldemort back to full power. You think there might be a connection?" Hermione asked. "Between the tournament and this divine awakening?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "But the timing seems suspicious. My powers start manifesting more strongly over the summer, right after Voldemort's return. Then suddenly the tournament is happening again, despite what happened last time. And now monsters from Greek mythology are finding their way into Hogwarts. The tournament does have ancient origins," Annabeth mused. "Its magic predates the clear separation between wizarding and divine systems. It's possible there's some connection we're not seeing yet. Whether there is or not," Ron pointed out pragmatically, "we need to make sure Harry's name doesn't end up in that goblet this time. One deadly tournament was enough. Dumbledore's age line should prevent that," Hermione assured him. "And they've added additional verification steps for all entered names. Because magical security worked so well last time," Harry said dryly. A gentle ripple passed across the dark water of the boathouse dock, catching Annabeth's attention. The surface trembled, small waves forming concentrically without any visible cause. "Harry," she said quietly, "are you doing that?" He followed her gaze to the water, his eyes widening slightly. "I don't think so. Not consciously, anyway." Hermione and Ron watched in fascination as the ripples intensified, the water rising into a small, perfect column about 6 inches high. It hovered there, undulating slightly, before taking a more defined shape, a miniature trident formed of liquid that glowed with faint blue light. "It's responding to your presence," Annabeth said with quiet certainty. "To your heritage. The water recognizes you as Poseidon's son." Harry extended a hand toward the trident of water, his expression a mix of wonder and trepidation. As his fingers neared the liquid formation, it surged upward, wrapping around his wrist in a gentle, flowing bracelet before absorbing into his skin with a brief flash of blue light. "Did you feel that?" he whispered. Annabeth nodded. It was a claiming of sorts. Not the official acknowledgement that would happen at Camp Half-Blood, but a sign of recognition from your father's domain. "Bloody hell," Ron breathed, staring at where the water had disappeared. "So it's really true. You're actually the son of a god." "Apparently," Harry said with a weak smile. "Just when I thought my life couldn't get any more complicated." Hermione, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this demonstration, suddenly straightened with the air of someone who had made an important connection. "The prophecy," she said urgently. "Harry, the prophecy about you and Voldemort, what if it's connected to this divine heritage somehow? What if that's why you survived the killing curse when no one else ever has?" "It's possible," Annabeth acknowledged, intrigued by this new angle. "Divine blood can confer certain protections, certain resistances to mortal magic." Harry's expression darkened. "Great. Another layer to add to the chosen one narrative. As if I didn't have enough pressure already." "It might work in your favor," Hermione suggested tentatively. "If your divine abilities give you advantages against Voldemort's magic." "It's not that simple," Annabeth cautioned. "Divine power comes with its own rules, its own limitations. And if the gods themselves are taking an interest in Harry's situation, as his dreams suggest, then there may be larger forces at work than just the wizarding conflict with Voldemort." "Larger than Voldemort?" Ron looked skeptical. "He's trying to take over the entire wizarding world." "The gods operate on a different scale," Annabeth explained. "Their concerns span millennia, civilizations, cosmic forces beyond what even the most powerful wizard can comprehend. A sobering silence fell over the group as they contemplated these implications. The gentle lapping of water against the boathouse dock seemed suddenly ominous, a reminder of the vast, ancient power now connected to their friend. "So what do we do?" Harry finally asked. "Practically speaking, right now. We continue your training," Annabeth said decisively. "But with adaptations for the current situation. I'll contact Chiron, explain that extraction isn't feasible at present, and request guidance on training a demigod within unusual circumstances. And we research," Hermione added with characteristic enthusiasm. "That book I found is just the beginning. If there's a historical connection between wizarding and divine magic, there must be more information in the Hogwarts library. We should also watch the tournament carefully," Ron suggested, surprising everyone with his strategic thinking. "If there is a connection, or if someone's planning to use it to get to Harry again, we need to spot the signs early this time." Harry looked between his friends with an expression of profound gratitude. "So you're all just accepting this? That I'm apparently half god on top of everything else?" "Mate," Ron said with a lopsided grin, "after 4 years of whatever madness follows you around, finding out you've got divine blood is actually less surprising than it probably should be." "It does explain a lot," Hermione agreed thoughtfully. "Your uncanny ability to survive impossible situations, the way trouble finds you, your resistance to certain magics. And we're with you," Ron added firmly. "God blood or not, you're still Harry. Just Harry with a few more quirks than we realized." The simple acceptance in his friends' faces seemed to lift a weight from Harry's shoulders. Annabeth felt a twinge of something unexpected, not quite jealousy, but a deep appreciation for the bonds Harry had formed here, bonds that remained unshaken even by this earth-shattering revelation. It reinforced her growing certainty that traditional extraction wasn't the right approach. Harry Potter might be a son of Poseidon, but he was also fundamentally embedded in this world, these relationships, this ongoing struggle against darkness. The challenge would be helping him integrate both aspects of his identity without either destroying the other. As they prepared to return to the castle, Annabeth noticed Harry lingering by the water's edge, his hand hovering just above the surface. Small ripples formed beneath his palm, responding to his presence without conscious command. "It feels like coming home," he said quietly when he noticed her watching. "Finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." "That's how it is for all of us," Annabeth told him. "When we discover our divine heritage, there's a sense of recognition, of things finally making sense." "But I already had that," Harry said, his voice troubled. "When I found out I was a wizard, when I came to Hogwarts, that was my homecoming. My belonging. What does it mean that I now have two?" Annabeth considered this thoughtfully. "Maybe it means you're uniquely positioned to bridge worlds that have been separate for too long. Maybe your dual heritage isn't a contradiction but a connection." Harry seemed to find some comfort in this perspective. "I hope so," he said. "Because I don't think I can choose between them." "Maybe you won't have to," Annabeth replied, though in her heart, she wondered if such harmony between the worlds was truly possible. As they made their way back to the castle under the protection of Harry's invisibility cloak, Annabeth's mind raced with new questions, new possibilities. This mission had evolved far beyond its original parameters, becoming something more complex and perhaps more significant than Chiron had anticipated. Harry Potter wasn't just a demigod to be extracted or a wizard to be left in his own magical sphere. He was something unprecedented, a nexus point between worlds that had maintained careful separation for millennia. And what that might mean for all of them, only time would tell. The next evening, the entire school gathered once again in the Great Hall for the selection of the Triwizard Champions. Excitement permeated the air, students from all 3 schools whispering predictions and placing informal bets on who would be chosen. Annabeth sat with Harry, Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table, all 4 watching the Goblet of Fire with varying degrees of tension. After their conversation in the boathouse, they'd agreed to maintain normal appearances while remaining vigilant for anything unusual. "Did you contact your camp?" Hermione asked quietly as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Annabeth nodded. "This morning. I used an iris message, our version of magical communication. Chiron was surprised by the developments, but he's adaptable. He's sending resources to help with Harry's training. Resources? Harry questioned. What kind of resources? Books, primarily, Annabeth explained. Training manuals designed for children of Poseidon, historical accounts of how divine abilities manifested in various circumstances. And possibly. She hesitated, a visitor. A visitor? Ron looked alarmed. Another demigod, you mean? Here at Hogwarts. Someone with experience training half-bloods in unusual situations, Annabeth clarified. Someone who can help in ways I can't. Before Harry could press for more details, Dumbledore rose from the staff table, silencing the hall with a simple raised hand. The moment has come, he announced, his blue eyes twinkling in the candlelight. The goblet of fire is ready to make its decision. With a theatrical wave of his wand, Dumbledore extinguished all candles except those within the carved pumpkins floating overhead, plunging the hall into semi-darkness. The goblet of fire now shone with brilliant blue-white flames, commanding every eye in the room. When the champions' names are called, Dumbledore continued, I ask them to come up to the top of the hall, walk along the staff table, and proceed through into the next chamber, where they will receive their first instructions. The flames in the goblet suddenly turned red, sparks flying in all directions. A tongue of flame shot into the air, ejecting a charred piece of parchment that Dumbledore caught deftly. The champion for Durmstrang, he read in a strong, clear voice, is Victor Crumb. Cheers erupted, particularly from the Durmstrang contingent, as the famous Quidditch player rose from the Slytherin table and proceeded toward the chamber behind the staff table. The goblet turned red again, producing a second piece of parchment. The champion for Beauxbatons, Dumbledore announced, is Fleur Delacour. A graceful blonde girl stood from the Ravenclaw table, drawing admiring glances as she glided toward the front of the hall. Tension mounted as the goblet flared red a third time. Annabeth felt Harry stiffen beside her, his hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles whitened. The champion for Hogwarts, Dumbledore called, is Cedric Diggory. The Hufflepuff table exploded with celebration as a handsome, athletic-looking boy stood, grinning broadly as he made his way to join the other champions. Harry sagged with visible relief. Thank Merlin, he breathed, then caught himself with a startled look at his own phrasing. Or should I say, thank the gods? Annabeth smiled. Either works. Excellent. Dumbledore called happily as the tumult died down. We now have our 3 champions. I am sure I can count upon all of you, including the remaining students from Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, to give your champions every ounce of support you can muster. By cheering your champion on, you will contribute in a very real. He stopped abruptly, and it was immediately apparent why. The goblet's flames had turned red once more, sparks flying more erratically than before. A fourth piece of parchment shot into the air. Automatically, Dumbledore reached out and caught it. He stared at the name written upon it for a long, silent moment that stretched painfully through the hall. Finally, he cleared his throat and read, Harry Potter. Every head in the great hall turned toward Harry, who sat frozen in shock, his face drained of color. Beside him, Ron and Hermione looked equally stunned, while Annabeth's mind raced through implications and possibilities. I didn't put my name in, Harry whispered, his voice barely audible over the rising murmurs. I swear I didn't. Harry Potter. Dumbledore called again. Harry. Up here, if you please. Go, Hermione urged, giving him a gentle push. We'll figure this out. Harry rose mechanically, his movements stiff as he walked the seemingly endless distance to the staff table. The murmuring had evolved into outright discussion, some voices angry, others confused. He's not even 17. How'd he do it? Not again, cheater. Annabeth watched him go, her tactical mind already analyzing what this development might mean. If the Triwizard Tournament had ancient origins that predated the separation of wizarding and divine magic, as she suspected, then perhaps it had recognized Harry's dual nature in ways the age line couldn't account for. Or perhaps someone had deliberately entered his name, just as they had the previous time, someone with knowledge of both magical worlds. As Harry disappeared into the chamber with the other champions, Annabeth exchanged a meaningful glance with Ron and Hermione. Their boathouse discussion had anticipated this possibility, but anticipation didn't make the reality any less concerning. The Triwizard Tournament had just become a dangerous complication in an already complex situation. Harry would be magically bound to compete in tasks designed to challenge full-grown wizards, all while grappling with his awakening divine heritage and the monsters it might attract. And somewhere in the background, two separate enemies might be watching: Voldemort, the dark wizard seeking Harry's destruction, and whatever forces had sent a Nemeian lion into Hogwarts despite its protections. As the hall erupted in chaos around them, Annabeth made a decision. It was time to accelerate Harry's training beyond basic control exercises. If he was going to survive the convergence of these threats, he would need every advantage both his wizard and demigod heritage could provide. And she would need additional help, the kind only another experienced demigod could offer. It was time to call in Percy Jackson. Chapter 3, Blood of Two Worlds. Harry confronts his possible godly parentage and what it means. A threat emerges that requires both demigod and wizarding powers. Percy arrives at Hogwarts to help. The combined forces of both magical systems are needed. Harry makes a decision about where he belongs. Resolution that creates a bridge between both worlds. Epilogue showing the new status quo now. I'll begin crafting the detailed outline for Chapter 1, focusing on creating an engaging narrative with natural dialogue, varied pacing, and a show, don't tell approach. The Demigod of Privet Drive, story outline. Plot overview. When Chiron's ancient magic detects an unprecedented demigod signature emanating from behind powerful magical barriers in Scotland, he becomes convinced that Harry Potter, a boy famous in another magical world entirely, might be an unclaimed half-blood. Concerned about the dangers of an untrained demigod, especially one already targeted by dark forces, Chiron dispatches his most strategic camper, Annabeth Chase, to infiltrate Hogwarts, confirm Harry's heritage, and bring him to Camp Half-Blood if necessary. What begins as a straightforward extraction mission becomes complicated as Annabeth discovers the intricate connections between Greek and wizarding magic, while Harry faces yet another revelation about his identity that could change everything. Themes: the intersection of different magical systems and mythologies. Identity and heritage, Harry grappling with yet another layer to his already complicated life. Free will versus destiny across two prophetic traditions. Belonging and finding one's true home. Power and responsibility in different magical contexts. Character arcs. Annabeth Chase begins as the confident strategist on a mission, but must adapt to an unfamiliar magical world. Her certainty about what's best for Harry erodes as she forms connections at Hogwarts and witnesses the complexity of his life there. Harry Potter, already struggling with his role as the Chosen One, Harry must now confront potentially divine heritage. His journey involves integrating these aspects of himself while determining where he truly belongs. Supporting characters, Hermione grows from suspicious rival to Annabeth's intellectual ally. Ron navigates feelings of inadequacy beside two extraordinary magical traditions. Percy Jackson eventually arrives, bringing Camp Half-Blood's perspective directly to Hogwarts. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.